Hello, everybody. Hi, hi, hi. Happy Friday, wherever you are. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your patience. I've got Neviu here with me today. There's so much going on out there on the internet. The disinformation campaign has restarted and is more aggressive on the part of Western media outlets, the usual think tanks and crisis groups that are just so desperate to have crisis. Um, there's random Irish diplomats coming out. There is allegations of humanitarian aid not getting in, but it is, and the information's out there. You've got the UN saying it. You've got Redwan Hussein also following up on the UN. So it's on repeat. Nebiu, what are you seeing as we get some people to populate in here? Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this link with everyone right now since we started a few minutes late so that folks can come in, because we're gonna have a little fun, because we can only take this so seriously at this point. You cannot be hitting the same buttons as you did for 2 years and it didn't work and then start the playbook over. Nebi, let me know what you're seeing. Lay out some of what you've observed, and then we're gonna get right into it as people come in.
Hi, Hermie. Hi, everyone. It's just been it's been wild. This whole week has been wild. It's been a freak show, and you know, I kind of feel like the TPLF leaders like Getachew Reda are kind of playing the good cop, and then the bad cop are all coming out. Dr. Tedros and their usual suspect. It's been crazy, the amount of defamation and slander against Ethiopia. I mean, it's been amazingly crazy, and how they've just been easily throwing out things despite what the United Nations has said, confirmed that aid is flowing in and things are getting easier, things are improving. Ethiopian government is releasing videos and photos of not just aid, but ENDF soldiers literally helping farmers out in the farmlands harvesting. And we're getting feedback from the people on the ground that they're happier and they're, welcoming the troops. But everything we've been hearing the whole week has been doomsday. Siege and this and that, and the usual, the TPLF supporters in the diaspora, the Tigray diaspora forces, or TDF, has been just super, super loud. Last week they were out, shutting down highways and just throwing tantrums, and that kind of backfired on them. So this week they've brought back the old song of Tigray genocide. But what really just amazes me is how they think this old same playbook that's being debunked, that has been just flunked. They think it's going to work somehow, and they just keep throwing it and throwing it out. But I will say one thing though: the mainstream media, has not been as responsive as they've been in the past. I think they're onto them, but it's been so obvious that these things are just utter lies that they're just spewing out there, but they got no shame.
Zero shame, zero shame. When it comes to this diaspora, all they're doing is showing the depths of their moral degradation. I mean, it is a bottomless pit, is what it looks like to me. To want this war to start again, to continue to lie about a siege on the region, which was already disproven the first time. There's an article that was written by one of the crisis group CEOs. You guys probably know William Davison. I'll pull him up here on the left. He was kicked out of Ethiopia in the first year of the war for disinformation, propaganda that was fueling the conflict. And then on the right is the CEO of Crisis Group. Her name is Comfort Ero. Don't know where she's from, but we didn't believe it when it was with that face on the left. And we're not going to believe it because you bring on a black face to the issue. And she wrote on this New York Times, there's so many parts of it that are just absolutely so ridiculous. The Ethiopian government placed Tigray under siege during the war. It's been debunked. That is not a thing. There was no blockade. The idea that you expect these areas that are occupied by insurgents to have unfettered humanitarian access, when every time that happens or the rebels get a hold of the humanitarian aid, they actually use it as a weapon to then go into neighboring regions and kill civilians. You've got the lead clown of them all, Tedros Adhanom, also hitting replay on the same playbook. He was good for 3 or 4 days during the peace deal. The day of the peace deal, you didn't see him say anything. He was back on his World Health Organization duties, talking about climate change for a couple of days. And then you didn't see much for the first maybe 4 or 5 days. We're now on the 9th day since the deal. And then he said, give peace a chance. And as, as inconsistent as you might expect from him, it wasn't, 2 days before then, he's on video talking about Tigray's under siege, cut off from the world. Here's what I hear when he says that. They're cut off from access to whatever weaponry or whatever it is that he's trying to get to his rebels. Because the last time he was the one that was orchestrating the aid, when you had those 1,000 large humanitarian aid trucks capable of feeding probably that whole region, all 1,000 of them that were actually used for the war, not come back because he was orchestrating the humanitarian aid, as opposed to Maureen Aching, who was the chief of mission of the UN in Addis Ababa, is on audio saying that Tedros Adhanom was circumventing the process of humanitarian aid and was essentially redirecting it to rebels. So that's what I hear when I hear him say that. I saw that there was a reporter from CBS. Like, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know. For some reason, it's worse when it comes from CBS because that's where I most recently worked. And Pamela Falk, I think is her name, how you pronounce her last name, shares what he says on video, and it's, puts this whole breaking alarm. Tedros Adhanom says Tigray's cut off from the world. No, Tigray is actually back where it's supposed to be, the majority of it, with the country that it is a part of and has been a part of for a very long time. And she didn't even bother to do a little bit of research to see that the UN just gave a briefing at COP27 that also included that there was more access to the northern part of Ethiopia, humanitarian aid access, since the cessation of hostilities. And so I just don't, people like Tedros, like, I just don't understand what really the end game is at this point. I mean, who is supposed to take him seriously, at least among the people in the Horn of Africa, after the clown show that office has been, the World Health Organization's office has been, because he's using his platform to perpetuate these lies. It is, I want to play and step in whenever you want, Nabia. This is not structured, but I want to play to the point of the humanitarian aid. I want to play what the UN says. UN rep just recently said 3 days ago, and I want to hear what you think.
In the meantime, our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that humanitarian access across northern Ethiopia has improved due to the cessation of hostilities. And, we had an update on that, I think, on Friday. So I can just reconfirm that our partners, they have started to provide assistance to people. But of course, we're, as I just said, we're ready to provide more because we know that the needs there are immense.
What is not clear?
It's very clear. It is very clear. You know, by any standard, Dr. Tedros has gone rogue. And, but I mean, is it that he's like the absolute supreme leader of the WHO that nobody can speak up? Is there not, I mean, the board of directors, I
Right.
mean, the Secretary General of the United Nations? I mean, the World Health Organization has taken a lot of beating under him. And it's not just the
Mhm.
Ethiopian issue. When it comes to the COVID issue, the pandemic, and a whole host of other things, ever since Tedros, who's not even a medical doctor, has taken over the health organization, the WHO has been filled with like drama, and it's been filled with like scandal after scandal. And I will mention a few of them. There was a sexual assault scandal in the Congo and multiple African countries where people and leadership at WHO that are friends with Tedros were getting away with assaulting women, local women there, abusing local women. And the controversy with COVID, that you've heard it all. And then now literally sponsoring a terror group in Ethiopia and single-handedly creating almost a shadow United Nations where operation was going from Mekelle directly to Geneva. It's never been heard of. There's, if the UN, ever cared for their name or reputation in this part of the world that they claim to serve and care about, and it's just really, I mean, it's unbelievable how he's been able to get away with this criminal. I mean, not too long ago, last year, it was an American economist who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize that actually built a case against Tedros Adhanom to the International Criminal Court,
Mhm.
and it was pretty valid. I mean, and if you look back at the life of Tedros, while he was in power in Ethiopia, whether as a Minister of Health or some of the other leadership that he's held, I mean, this guy's filled with terror. He's got so many lives, blood on his hand. And first, it's a shame that such a thug is running the World Health Organization. And now, even if we say, okay, let's forget about everything that he did, this deadly war that he's helped fuel, we finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. The TPLF leaders themselves have agreed to disarm and appear to be going through the process. And he's out there basically trying to sabotage it.
Mhm.
So it's just really unbelievable how he's been able to get away with this. And not only that, there's some people that are now nominating him for some kind of prestigious award. His friends in Western Europe. I mean, this is, you
He
can't make
does
this
deserve
up.
an award, though. Let's give it to him. He deserves an award for being the biggest clown show. I mean, for having the audacity to go as far as he did. He deserves something. He deserves something. He goes on record as something. It is just shocking that the extent to which he has gone to really, I mean, I didn't even think that you could use your platform. I mean, if I was often for journalists, there's only so far. I mean, that's part of why I had to make the shift that I did. There's only so far that you can go when you're advocating for something that's not necessarily directly tied to what you do, right? And so why is he even allowed to go as far as he is, whether he was right or not? Actually, like the fact that he's so involved in just a very specific part of the conflict. He doesn't care about Ethiopia. He doesn't actually care about Tigray. In fact, if he did, he wouldn't be, putting up pride after the June 2021 unilateral ceasefire that the Ethiopian government declared. We saw the New York Times calling child soldiers scrappy young recruits, and then had to actually bring down one of their photos. I mean, it's, and I saw the communication person, the lead communication person, I forget her name, at who also perpetuating the same thing. So how deep does this go? Why is there so much aggression against Ethiopia just wanting to be a sovereign, independent country? That's literally all that the country is asking for, one that has peace. I also want to get your thoughts on the unfortunate regression of Getachew Reda. I mean, I'm not surprised. We saw during even the peace deal announcement, he was saying this war was imposed on us at a time where they were announcing a peace deal. How is a war imposed on you when you actually attacked first, when you chose to not be a part of the country and actually tried to be this breakaway state? And then he read minutes later the prepared statement, because he was going rogue. They're all gone rogue. The prepared statement where he said that they will not take part in hostile propaganda. He recently quote tweeted Professor Kandea, who is a TPLF member. I mean, he's a spokesperson for the Tigray External Office Affairs. They literally make all this stuff up, by the way. Like they make up all these different offices, organizations. I saw this reporter that's based in Nairobi calling the Tigray Defense Forces, and I responded to him saying, "Who is that? Who is the Tigray Defense Forces? That's not an organization or entity that is recognized by Ethiopia, a sovereign country. We know the Tigray People's Liberation Front, an entity that is recognized as a terrorist organization, both by U.S. Homeland Security and the Ethiopian Parliament." And then he responded saying, "I'm just trying to report." So he said, so you're saying the Ethiopian government, negotiated with terrorists? Yeah, that's the reality of it. It's an unfortunate reality, but it doesn't make them any less terrorists because they had to sit at a table with them. So are you surprised, or what do you think of Getachew's backsliding?
I'm not surprised at all. I would be surprised if he didn't. If you look at the pattern of Getachew Reda, it's almost bipolar, right? It's like, 1 minute, he's saying we're gonna revenge against the Amharas, and the next minute he's like, Amhara's our brother, and the next minute, it's just he's all over the place, but. Overall, if you look at the pattern as an entity, the TPLF with Getachew and with other leaders, they've always used these opportunities when the guns are silenced and humanitarian aid is flowing. They've used this time to regroup, right? We've seen it not once, twice, three times where they regrouped. When they cry about, oh, humanitarian aid has to come in, they're talking about food going to the rebel forces because there was never a restriction for civilians. So I think that, if they can find an opportunity, if they can find a weakness, if they can find a hole, I've always suspected that they would use that, to use this break. It's almost like a break to regroup, to refuel. I mean, how many trucks did they steal? How many warehouses did they raid? How many liters of fuel did they steal from the United Nations with complete impunity, and then broke truces and ceasefires and relaunched? So, if we're not careful, if the Ethiopian government, Ethiopia is not careful, TPLF has a lot of enablers, very powerful eneblers, outside of Ethiopia that would look the other way if the TPLF was to break this peace and relaunch their assault after refueling and then repurposing their troops. So I think it's absolutely important that regardless of what Getachew is saying and what all the clowns are saying around Europe and the US and DC, that this disarmament process is expedited. and that has to happen really quickly. I will say one thing with the new rhetoric, including Getachew and the professor, whoever that guy's from Mekelle, is that they seem to be kind of turning into their usual scapegoat, Eritrea. It's
Yes.
like Eritrea this, Eritrea that, Eritrea this, and it's a bunch of excuses, obviously.
Mhm.
But there's been a lot of throwing Eritrea's name around and blaming it for what it rains today.
Yeah, I heard that, and I heard from a good source that they were trying to get these, the issue of Eritrea into the negotiations deal, but they didn't have any, they didn't have it literally was a non-issue, right? The Ethiopian government, the way they approach it is like, they're what Eritrean forces? Like we've never said that there's Eritrean forces there. And frankly, and this is just me reading between the lines, I think they're saying, and if there is, it's a part of an alliance agreement, a Horn of Africa alliance agreement that we have taken part in, just like any other country is allowed to do that with their allies as their defense forces. But nonetheless, the word Eritrea is not mentioned in the negotiation, the peace deal they signed once, not once. If it was a key issue, you would have not signed a peace deal without that issue in there. What did they say when was it the AU or someone suggested that Eritrea be a part of the negotiations? They lost their minds. Why wouldn't you want a country that is actually your neighbor, like your neighbor, you share a border with them, to take part in the negotiations if what you really want is peace, and if you really believe that they are a significant part of the military offensive in Tigray or defensive in Tigray, right? So you didn't get you signed a deal saying that, not having it mention Eritrea at all. You're supposed to be moving towards disarmament right now. So that's what we really need to be talking about, is where is that part? We're talking about 9 days in. Within 10 days, they were supposed to have heavy weaponry disarmed. And then they have 20 more days. They have 21 more days to actually completely disarm. And it looks like they are trying to find excuses. But none of it is even getting picked up, honestly, by the mainstream media outlets, which is good, except this op-ed. That's their way out, right? You do an op-ed in the New York Times.
The New York Times op-ed.
And you have the crisis group person do it. So I've actually put in an inquiry to the Ethiopian government saying what Getachew Reda is doing is breaking Article 13, Part 2. Somebody was so great that they actually found it in the documents, and I went and verified it. So I said, this is what they're doing. Isn't this against the hostile propaganda? And the response I got is, yes, it looks like there's some people, among them, I'm not sure if it's the ones that were in South Africa or not, that are, of course, trying to sabotage this peace deal. And we'll just continue to push back with the information that humanitarian aid is actually getting in. So now that Getachew is outside of Tigray, living his best life, probably, he's back. He's back to, and now he's doing it with the comfort of, being in Nairobi. I'm sure he's got great security. I'm sure he's eating well. I'm sure he's sleeping just fine these days now that he's not worried about ENDF, busting into his bunker. And there's no remorse. There's absolutely no remorse. What do you do with this group that is just completely set on lying, warmongering, and trying to destroy the country? I mean, it's are you shocked? TPLF, right? And you've known them for decades, but are you shocked that they're still continuing like this?
I'm not shocked. I was actually shocked when they signed the peace deal, because I honestly thought that they would fight until the last bullet, so to say. But let's remember that they did not sign this peace deal out of the goodness of their heart, or they did not sign this peace deal out of care for the people of Tigray. They signed this big deal, this peace deal, because they were forced. They had to, and they needed a saving face to come out of this conflict, and they were given this opportunity for a saving face. And I hope that they would use this opportunity, because it's a good deal for them. It's a good deal to come out of this, not having to face charges for war crimes, to come out of this, not having to face prison time, or not to be dead. Let's remember that at any given moment, even now, the ENDF forces can walk into Mekelle by force and disarm the TPLF. That could have happened 7 months ago. That literally could have happened a year ago if it was not for the pressure that Ethiopia became under by the United States and the European Union, with the sanctions and with the shenanigans that were basically trying to tie the Ethiopians' hand. But Ethiopia has said enough is enough. We're not gonna we're not gonna be pressured anymore, and has showed the determination that they will follow through and get this conflict resolved with a military solution that is already at hand. So the TPLF is forced into signing this deal. The TPLF does not understand weakness, does not understand peace. They only understand strength. And Ethiopia at this point is coming with full strength. They have no leverage on Ethiopia. The TPLF handlers have no leverage really on Ethiopia. So it's in their best interest to go through with this. I think I think Getachew Reda knows this. He's a smart man. I think that some of the leaders know this, and they would want to take this route. But I think what is happening is they want to please their supporters, and potentially the diaspora supporters, right? So are they doing some dancing to give some kind of an impression that, hey, we still got it? I don't know. It is drama. That's all it is. It's drama. It's going to happen. The disarmament is going to happen one way or another. So the choice will be that, do you want to get disarmed and walk out with impunity, or do you want to get disarmed by the gun? One way or the other, the disarmament will happen.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they have gotten the chance of a lifetime. They have literally gotten away with murder, and a lot of murder, right? So you are taken out of Tigray in U.S. military planes. Their fate could have been much like this. That was. I mean, that was not. Even with all the blood on their hands and what they're accused of doing, it was very uncomfortable to see them being killed and actually seeing their bodies. I mean, that's not the fate that I would want for anybody, including the worst of TPLF. I mean, it's not what I would want for Getachew Reda or Debunking or Tzadkan, but that is what they should be looking at when thinking about, okay, how should we proceed forward? We actually have been given this huge lifeline. I mean, how much more money do you need? They've already have money. I don't know how much the diaspora is continuing to raise. We've talked about how much they raise for Tigray, but none of it gets to Tigray. I mean, one of their spokespeople here in the diaspora, Maza Mohammed or government head, she was on Adiola's show, our Nigerian American journalist, and was asked, what are you guys doing with all of this money that you're raising? You say it's for Tigray, but then you say the banking services are not available. and they weren't available, and they aren't available in many areas. And so what did she say? Oh, we send it to the refugees in Tigray. Oh, we also have some in Kenya and Djibouti.
Yeah.
Please, like, get your lies together. She was not ready. That was not a part of the script. So none of this money is actually going to Tigray. Maybe it's now going to people who are in, like Getachew and all of them who've been outside of Tigray. But people, families are actually sending money however they are able to, and then half of it is being taken by these middlemen in Tigray. The way that I've had it explained to me is there's basically a bunch of people there sitting on cash, and they take half of whatever people send through different channels, and then they basically act like a bank and give it to you. So where is all this money going? It's not going to Tigray. I think there's two different worlds. There's the Tigray that actually exists in Ethiopia, and then there is this fake diaspora that lives in their imagination that claims to care about what's happening on the ground. And I think now we can clearly say that's where the Getachos and whoever was at the table are now, that they're literally outside of Tigray and really have nothing to worry about. They can continue to warmonger. They can backslide. I just, I too was also surprised when they signed the peace deal. I mean, I think I might have celebrated the least out of everyone, because there was something in me that went, nah, I don't know. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't going to go
You were
down.
very cautious. You were,
I
yeah.
was, I was like, it's like once you know
Yeah.
them, even in the diaspora level, you're just like, this is never gonna just happen with them respecting a piece of paper, a deal, respecting a signature. No, I just think it's going to really be finished ultimately by the only government in Ethiopia.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you definitely were very cautious. Some of us were like, ooh, right away. We're like,
A moment. Honestly, I thought about it and I was like, I should have celebrated a little bit. Like, I felt like I missed the moment. So there's
yeah.
a little bit of that was warranted. What did you think the day of, and then how has it changed maybe now?
I was happy. I'm not gonna lie, I was happy, because it's been very difficult 2 years. That has been, just imagining the suffering that our people have gone through, and just to hear, at first I was obviously skeptical, but as I realized that this is the real deal, I was happy, and just. Um, I knew, and what was going on through my mind is that the TPLF would not sign a deal unless they absolutely have no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
And them signing a deal like that meant that they finally have come to terms that one of two things. One is that they've come to terms that they've come to the end of the road, and that this is their way out. Or the second is that their sponsors have told them, not anymore. My camera is there, right? Maybe the U.S., who's been enabling them this whole time, is saying, hey, you can't push this anymore. Either way, it's good news, that they've given up. But the other reason why I rejoiced is that regardless of which scenario played out, to force them into signing this, knowing in the back of my mind that if this doesn't go through, that the military option is very, very feasible, which some actually prefer that, kind of gives me their reassurance that this war has come to an end, or will come to an end, even if they start it. So, and as far as the money you're talking about, here's one thing I know about the TPLF, and we've been, like you said, we've been in the struggle for a decade plus, and the TPLF, it's not about the people of Tigray. It's never been about anyone else but themselves. And there's two things they care about, and this is textbook. Two things they care about is power and money. That's it. They're money people. They're business people. It's all about the dough. It's all about the economics.
The Benjamins.
It's yeah, and you know, during the TPLF era, if you ever went to Ethiopia and saw how lavishly they lived, you know, the kind of cars they drove, the kind of homes they lived in. I mean, stuff that you don't see in Africa that they had, the kind of money they throw. And this guys like to party. You know, the kind of parties they threw. I mean, they love that power and just being over people. It's psychopathic a little bit, you know. So with all this money that's being raised, and honestly, I don't know where the money's going, but I do know that they love money. You know, was money being raised to buy weapons? Was money being raised for the troops, for the rebels? But I will say this: the notion that the money that's being raised in the diaspora was going to the people of Tigray. I mean, how can you tell me on one hand that my family's been cut off? I haven't talked to them for 2 years. All right, and then at this on you know talk on two sides of your mouth and say, "Oh, I'm helping people." It just doesn't make sense. So they're making up a bunch of lies, and they somehow think we don't remember to connect
Right.
the dots.
Right. Like we've done this before. We literally, it's like November again, right? I really
All over.
all over again. I think that, you know, first of all, thanks everybody for coming in. There's a lot of people walking in. Really appreciate the comments too. We're gonna please ask any questions, make any comments that on stuff that you want us to discuss. It is November, you know, a year from when we started the No More movement, 2 years from when the actual war started. And my guess is that we're going to have to pull together again and rally at some point in the coming weeks or months. I do not at all trust the U.S. approach in this. You look at the New York Times article; it's very warmongery. It literally could have been written a year ago or 2 years ago. Switch out a few different elements, and it's still the same article. The State Department, including Secretary Blinken, has never acknowledged the peace deal in the way that it is actually written. He called it a cessation of hostilities, which is basically a ceasefire, just another ceasefire. He did not even call it a permanent cessation of hostilities. And he certainly didn't say the word disarmament. And so, you know, I wholeheartedly believe that the approach is the same. That maybe in South Africa they just said, you know what, just sign the deal. I mean, like it's a piece of paper. Like just sign it. We're still gonna keep doing what we're doing. I still think there's value in that they signed it because it shows how little leverage they had, and it shows to anyone who actually cared, that thought maybe these people cared, that this is really about them, right? This is really about them. And to anyone, like the show Redacted, you know, called me after the peace deal. And one of the things Clayton Morris, one of the hosts, said is, so if they were saying genocide and now they've agreed to disarm, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you agree to disarm if your whole allegation to begin with is genocide? So I think there's value in the fact that they signed it, whether or not they'll try to backslide on it. And I've always said this isn't like a trust deal. This is a deal where the Ethiopian government and the people of Ethiopia, including of Tigray, are going to just have to see this through. But every indication from the US has been undermining this deal. And here's an example from the Bureau of African Affairs, which is just like, we know some of the people in there, absolutely just anti-Ethiopia in their approach, always including people that are these tribalist representatives or claim to be tribalist representatives. And this is what the Twitter accounts put up just, I think it was a day or two ago. So it says, Redwan Hussein said in Nairobi that by week's end, humanitarian aid would flow unhindered as agreed in Pretoria. Vulnerable Ethiopians in Tigray, Afar, and Amhara need aid now. Goes on to say, also, restoration of services, protection of civilians, and human rights accountability, waiting urgently for actions to respect and implement the agreement. Hashtag Nairobi talks must deliver. First of all, that's a horrible hashtag. It's very long. And who is writing these tweets? Like who?
Oh my gosh.
I feel like some TPLF activist is writing their tweets.
It looks like it. It's just, it's juvenile. I can't believe that's coming out of an official U.S. government account.
Like that's something that you
Wow.
can see from anybody. So are you like, what do you make of this? The fact that the Secretary of State, the State Department never properly acknowledged the peace deal, that Mike Hammer, I don't believe, haven't been following some of what he's saying lately, but I don't think he's acknowledged it properly either. And then you've got the Bureau of African Affairs saying things like that, when in fact humanitarian aid access has increased. Like seeing this repeat, what do you make of just U.S. foreign policy?
The U.S. foreign policy, especially under the Biden administration, has been a complete disaster. I mean, from Ethiopia, remember, this is the same administration that pulled the U.S. troop out of Afghanistan in such a way that Americans were running after planes just to be evacuated. This has been a complete, you talk about clown show. This administration has been a clown show, especially when it comes to foreign policy. Remember, there was a time when this president came to office within a few months where diplomatic relationship with France almost broke down. It did break down for a little bit. You talk about the European Civil War in Eastern Europe. This has been and a number of other places. It's too long to mention that this administration, one, has been very bullish and aggressive. Some might call it warmongering, and it's been Trump during the Trump era. The U.S. had kind of pulled back from a lot of things because it was centered around America first. It was like everything else that's going on is not our business. In a way, that turns out to be a better deal for the American people and for the world than this current super aggressive, super intrusive, intervention-based, we're the world's police, we're the humanitarian police, where we're literally going around the world and we think we're helping or whatever, but we're actually fueling wars and causing death and suffering to a lot of people. With all that said, when it comes to Ethiopia, this war would not have lasted for 2 years if the Biden administration was not enabling the TPLF terrorist group. They were enabling them by giving them legitimacy. They were enabling the TPLF by giving them diplomatic cover. They were enabling them by pushing other international institutions like the United Nations Security Council that held, 17 meetings on this, the European Union and other, European American allies that followed the lead of the Biden administration and sanctioned Ethiopia and Eritrea, which really and threatened. There was a time, remember, there was a military threat made for Ethiopia not to go, for the Ethiopian Defense Forces, not even to go into Tigray to fight the TPLF. So this has prolonged the war for too long, for 2 miserable years. So I think Ambassador Mike Hammer, I do give him some credit because, at least on paper or on the face of it, some of the rhetoric changed when he came in about, we're going to respect Ethiopian sovereignty, at least reaching out and meeting with Ethiopians. Was it just a show? But nevertheless, even the rhetoric wasn't right until Mike Hammer came through and started saying the right things. But he's been kind of quiet now. And who knows what's going on. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to speak with him when he comes back from Kenya or Africa. But the TPLF has gotten this far because they were enabled, because they were empowered, because they were protected, because they were given diplomatic cover, and because Ethiopia was threatened, blocked, sanctioned, and almost made defenseless. Remember, with the arms embargo, if it wasn't for allies like Turkey, this could have been a completely different story by now, and may have been the Ethiopian government that would be disarming right now, and it would be back to the TPLF tyranny that we passed through for the 27 years. So,
right. It's interesting. Somebody said, I'm going to pull up a comment. Election's over, so bullying business as usual. I was a little bit suspicious that the kind of the rhetoric slowing down. I mean, I don't think it's all about the elections, but was this kind of fear that we would mobilize, and we did. The what you guys did in Colorado, what the Ethiopian American Development Council did in Colorado, what AIPAC has done with selecting certain candidates nationally, with what the California team has done, I think has been incredibly powerful and is really setting the stage for a future that looks very different in terms of the political pool that we have in Congress. But there seems to be some alignment between the rhetoric kind of taking it to the next level and then the elections being over. What do you think? Any connection at all?
Yeah, in American politics, all politics is local politics. All right. So any representative in Congress or senator, the very first thing that they're going to worry about is their constituents. And if you have a large Ethiopian constituents and they see that population can mobilize against them, they would probably try to vote in line with that population. Or I think that there's a correlation definitely because through the lobbying, like with AIPAC, I think that a lot. Remember when we first started a year ago, before, let me rephrase, before the coordinated lobbying, like with AIPAC, started, every other day there was some congressman from somewhere making a statement condemning Ethiopia, saying genocide. I mean, literally repeating the TPLF word somewhere sometimes from places you've never heard of, like, oh, like this place. I mean, and that completely came to a complete stop, because of the lobbying and the advocacy that's being done. And also because Ethiopians, Eritreans, Pan-Africans started getting online, started getting on Twitter and directly responding to this lawmakers and letting them know that's not the truth. But right now, American politics is so polarized and divided. And in many places, we've seen this elections are so close that, it's really in the representatives' best interest to do the right thing. I will give you a perfect example. New Jersey, the main player, the pro TPLF player that pushed the HR 6600 sanction, Malonowski, has been unseated. For example, he's no longer in Congress. And then you look at Georgia, Senator Warnock, who's been not been so great for Ethiopia, is neck and neck tight that he's going to the runoff. He could have stood with the community. That could have been another 20, 30,000 votes that he could have picked up. That could have given him a win. So, it does make a difference if what E is saying is true, and that the reemergence of this bullying has to do with the election being over. Let's wait and see when Georgia is over. It might get worse after that.
Yeah, yeah.
They still need us for Georgia.
They do, right? I mean, I think you said this on the show a couple of days ago. All we got is us. Like, it really us. And when I say us, I mean Ethiopians, Eritreans, our allies, our friends that Breakthrough News and Answer Coalition and PSL and just amazing people that we've met that just, based on aligned values. People like Ann Garrison, like Lawrence Freeman, who get it and who do the work, outside of just Ethiopians and Eritreans who have really taken on the load of constantly pushing back against this disinformation, showing up at rallies in different cities across the country, being incredibly resilient against all odds. Again, I just believe in us. Like, I think the work needs to be done on the politics front, and you guys are doing that in Colorado, and AIPAC's doing a really good job, and all these different communities across the U.S. are doing a great job with civic engagement, and it should continue. And I think the pushing back against disinformation online and calling different offices should continue. But the win was never handed to Ethiopia or Eritrea, and it's not going to start now. No one's going to hand that region peace and economic prosperity. It's really going to be the leadership of those countries in the Horn of Africa, and then the people, both on the inside and those of us in the diaspora who have connections there. That's really what it comes down to. And I just don't really see us to be being in a place where we let up. Like, we just can't let up, because you see how they've just ramped things up even after the peace deal. So what would you say to people in terms of like really staying in the game, looking at this as a long-term thing, rest if you must, pause when you must, but just know that this is not an overnight win that has a beginning and an end. I know it sounds exhausting, but that's what I think.
It's exhausting, but one thing I would say about our people is that they've shown an amazing amount of resilience.
Yes.
And like you mentioned, Ethiopians, Eritreans, and we've been so blessed to have, friends like Eugene and that have really, really, really amplified our voice, and in the progressive movement and in the pro peace movement, where our cause has been elevated. That this is not just our issue, but it is connected to a global movement. Is an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. But I would say the people of Ethiopia, the people of Eritrea, I don't know any other people from any other country that love their country as much as Ethiopians or Eritreans. I mean, we are love our countries like obsession level love our country.
Yes.
You
It's
know?
truly like this, it's such a love affair. I mean, I love it. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yep, it's great. So I don't think we're gonna get tired. Keep the resilient, but it's just getting started. It's not over until we're completely free. It's not over. When I say free, it's not just the end of this war. I mean, until we get total sovereignty. Sovereignty, energy sovereignty by finishing the GERD. Remember, right now, Ethiopia spends like $4 billion on oil, buying oil. When the GERD is finished, a lot of that is going to be replaced. The factories will run on cheap electricity. And as far as the cars, it's time to start switching to electric cars. But Ethiopia is being built. The new Ethiopia is being built on 90% green energy. So we're not going to need oil. That's sovereignty. We're going to need food sovereignty. The wheat production, this massive cluster farming that's happening is encouraging. We're going the right direction. So until we have this complete sovereignty where some hostile country is not coming in and threatening us with a sanction or threatening us with this, I'm going to cut you off from this trade, or I'm going to, do this and do that to you unless you jump when I say jump. until we get that complete sovereignty, we're on the way of getting. You cannot sleep. We cannot stop. So that's what I would say. And right now, it's time to buckle up, double down, and the noisemakers are out with their usual disinformation. It's time to fight back and just continue to do that, and to continue to organize, and keep that unity, and strengthen that organization. You mentioned earlier about protest and hitting the streets, and we've seen how effective that is. We need to continue to do that. I know just last week there was a protest rally in Washington, D.C. There was one in London. There was another one. I forgot where it was. There was three of them. Geneva. Yeah, thank you. So maybe we need to do another one at the Ireland embassy.
Listen, I'm like, what is it? The 21st is coming up. That was around the time we did rallies in November. The way that the timing of things kind of has been lining up. I mean, the peace deal signed literally the same 24 hours that the war started 2 years prior. It feels like No More 2.0 is loading. The aggression's the same. The claims of siege is the same. The trying to weaponize this issue of humanitarian aid as if they have any credibility left. I mean, crisis group is such a joke. There's actually one quote I want to read you out of the op-ed that I just found hilarious. And then we're going to get to some of you guys' questions. Thank you, Binyam. Thank you to everybody who's been contributing and asking questions and comments. I'm marking them, so we're going to get through them. You probably don't remember this part, so I'm curious to hear, or maybe you didn't catch it the first time. Curious to hear what you think. Hold on. You know what? I think I need to upload it. Basically, they were just talking about certain elements. Let's see if this is it. No, it's not. We're going to come back to it.
Oh, that's the BBC guy.
Yeah.
I thought I read the other day that BBC was cutting their African staff. I'm like, why is
I mean, basically they it sounds like they are, and they're going with, undertrained, super green reporters that just don't know what they're doing. Because I'm going to show you a couple of things that he said. So we'll do that first, and then I'm going to show you the New York Times. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this link. We're trying to have a little fun with the craziness today on this Friday night, and a lot to get through, a lot of clips to talk about. So this guy, apparently he's a BBC reporter, says, talks between representatives of the Tigray Defense Forces and the Ethiopian Federal Army meeting in Nairobi are expected to end today. The discussions touched on the opening of humanitarian corridors and disarmament and reintegration of TPLF fighters into the Ethiopian army. None of that is in the peace deal. So I said to him, who is the Tigray Defense Forces? Okay, there's so many parts of this that's wrong. First of all, he calls them Tigray Defense Forces, and then he says TPLF combatants. The reintegration does not say they're going to be reintegrated into the Ethiopian army. Literally, all of this stuff is in the peace deal. I feel like this is journalism 101. I don't even think a student would make these mistakes, because you literally have to be making up entities that don't exist. So why would you make up Tigray Defense Forces? That's not anywhere on the document. Every instance of referring to the rebels is the Tigray People's Liberation Front. So I basically said that to him, and then he responds with
he responded. Let's see.
He did, but with a comment that was even more factually mind-boggling and just ignorant. So he said, then your government is negotiating with that group you call terrorists in Nairobi. You might want to check with them. My work is only to report. But you're not reporting, though. You're literally making stuff up. There's a piece of document that says the TPLF, you made up Tigray Defense Forces, and then he's talking about reintegration of TPLF fighters into the Ethiopian army. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. So this is the
Well, first of all, I would say Victor should talk to the BBC to pay the $8 for him to get the blue check mark.
Wait a minute.
You can buy that now.
Oh
Look.
my God, seriously. This could be anyone. Is this even real? Now I'm not sure. Like, is this even a real reporter at BBC? They literally can submit it for you.
Yeah.
That is
It's it's I mean, it's not unusual. I mean, this is how loose this so-called journalists are. I mean, it just I don't know where they get their news. I mean, I sometimes feel like they're going around reading comments off of social media and like reporting it as news.
right.
The Tigray Defense Force, I mean, there's only one defense force in Ethiopia, and no one ever said any integration of Tigray combatants into the ENDF. So I mean, that's the thing. They literally sometimes make up stuff.
Make up stuff. My only job is to report. Then report. Then like I this is funny that we're discussing, you know, Twitter responses, but what I literally said is I'm trying to help you do your job. Like really, like I'm trying to help you do your job if you're actually interested in getting it right. And I said, yes, they were designated a terrorist org by the Ethiopian parliament after they started the war in November 2020. Yes, the Ethiopian government sat with reps of a terrorist org. That's just an unfortunate reality. And there is no such thing as Tigray Defense Forces. I mean, it's, as someone who just genuinely believes in the power of good journalism, it is so irking to see somebody. First of all, don't respond. Like, don't respond if that's what you're going to say. Just go ahead, stick with your, you know, alternative facts, as that term was coined, and just keep doing what you're doing, because what you just said does not actually negate what I am trying to tell you in terms of facts.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's being packaged as a journalist and news media. I mean, in the age of 24-hour news, where Africa is a bottom priority. Anyone, with one thing I think is that just from looking at, just go back and look at, just pick a time frame, the last 30 days, and just search the web, search any news agency, international tier one news agency. And if we did a research on this, and every time that Africa was mentioned, is it positive or negative? I would guarantee you it would be like a disproportionately higher percentage of the time would be like disaster, like savages. I mean, that's the narrative. And I think there was actually a research on this. I just can't recall it right now, but there was a research done that like a great amount of the news that's told in the West about Africa is stereotypical, that Africans are savages, that they kill each other, they do this, they do that. None of the good stuff is covered. For example, I've never seen a Western coverage of Ethiopia, the Green Legacy, Ethiopia planting 20 billion trees. I've never heard of any, stories on the Western media about how Eritrea has, gained basically sovereignty in economics or food security. I've never seen any coverage of the uh, road that was just built between Kenya and Ethiopia, and how there's now trade flowing between the two countries, or any of that good stuff. So when you talk about this peace deal that was brought together by African elders, and it doesn't fit that formula of the savage Africans killing each other. The image that we're seeing coming out of South Africa and Kenya is Africans sitting around the table negotiating and talking for peace. So they that doesn't fit that narrative. So they gotta find how to inflame the situation, how to gaslight the situation, how to find little things and blow them up. That's what they do.
That's
And
what they.
it's really unfortunate that a lot of time they use the tools that are Africans, like this guy, to do the job for them. Not to mention, of course, there's the Davidsons and the Martin Plots and
Mm-hmm.
that gang, but really about half of the others that do this are actual Africans.
That's the part. That's the part. That is the part that I think is most enraging. Is these, I don't even know what to call them now. They say they're not, TPLF supporters, but I think they still are. It's all a game. But you've got these activists, that so-called Tigray activists or TPLF activists, who are feeding into an age-old dehumanization of Africans, and they're not going to be immune from that. You're not going to say, "Oh, we." Like in Tigray, or this specific group from Tigray, we're not savages like the rest of Ethiopians. You're creating a narrative that paints the entire continent really as savages. And I think the fact that our own people, or people from our countries, are actually taking part in that, there's certainly some savages, but they're not the people. It's these ideological political organizations like the TPLF, who only exists in conflict and in war, and in on the bodies of poor people specifically. This so-called elite, which they're not elite, like even when they have an education, the way that they think is such a depraved mentality that says, if someone of another ethnicity does well, or if my countrymen does well, then that means I didn't do well. And just so narrow minded as people who live in the EU, who live in the United States among so much diversity, and then you're narrowing everybody down to an ethnicity that most of the time that they don't even claim themselves. Most people say I'm Ethiopian first, and then if you ask their ethnicity, then they might give it to you. But I don't even know how wholeheartedly people believe in those categories. It's just something that we've gotten used to talking about. So I think that the moral deprivation of these activists that are still fueling the war is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. Like, I cannot imagine myself even being friends with anyone again that does not condemn this behavior. I don't care what your politics are. I'm flexible in terms of whether people are not necessarily pro the government. Fine, that's completely fine. Even if there's some leaning towards Tigray needing something to protect it, or whatever the case, I'm flexible. But for those who cannot condemn the level of lies, the level of humanitarian weaponization that the TPLF and activists have taken a part of, like, goodbye. Goodbye. I was saying to friends of mine who are asking, what do I do? There's this person I've been friends with for so many years, over a decade, or, my partner, and, I just don't know how to talk to them. Don't give them any more space. Don't give them any more space to keep saying, oh, but this is happening to people in Tigray. They don't care. You don't care what actually happened in Tigray. You don't have to entertain people pretending like they care about what's happening in Tigray when really they care about this egomaniac version of what they think it means to be from Tigray, even if it means at the cost of the lives of the people on the ground. I mean, I don't know how you deal with it. I'm curious to hear how you deal with people that, maybe were in your life and aren't as much. Like, are they changing? Do you think you would talk to them differently than you might have talked to them a year or two ago, now that things have become so obvious?
Yeah, it's been really unfortunate. It's actually sad, that we've lost. I've lost many friends that we've been friends with for a long time. Over this, that have just turned out to be, TPLF sympathizers, that cannot just really even have any logic or reason. But I would say this, that I've also made 10 times as many friends like you.
Yeah,
Um,
I can't believe
and
we didn't
we
know
would
each
not
other.
have met if it wasn't for this. And there's so many people nationwide, Simon, the APAC people. I mean, there's so many people that I've met in this movement that are now suddenly like lifetime friends, like
I know.
BFF. So you know, I would say as far as like friendship, communion, and community, we've gained more than we've lost. And in fact, you know, we've really have come together like I've dreamed. I've always imagined, you know, our community coming together, standing strong, you know, without all this tribal BS, and that's happened. And I think that it's also possible, and I'm hopeful that I know we are capable of radical love, and I know that we're compassionate people, and I know that we can overcome this, and the TPLF would soon be history, and that we can all become one again. I mean, I think 50 years is enough. And this guy's the TPLF leaders. I think it's time for them to enjoy their golden years. I mean, retirement. I mean, everybody got to retire sometime. And I think that, you know, the TPLF has been around for 50 years. It's been 50 years of tyranny. It's been 50 years of medieval tribal politics. What has that gotten us? What has that gotten the Tigrayan people? What has that gotten any Ethiopian? Nothing. And what has the TPLF to show for? You know, besides maybe the wealth that they looted and put offshore, as far as the people of Tigray, the TPLF has nothing to show for. You know, they got stuff to show for themselves and their families, as far as wealth and that kind of stuff. But there's nothing the Tigrayan people have gotten out of this, and I think that people realize that, and the new dawn is here. Whether you like it or not, the people of Tigray, the people of Ethiopia are ready to move past this politicians of the 60s era. That's who the TPLF are. I think their time is gone, and Ethiopia is a nation that's majority. I mean, what's the average age is 19. It's a whole new generation that's emerging, and we deserve a new Ethiopia, a new Horn of Africa that's based on equity, that's, you know, where people engage in politics in a civil way, with debating ideas, not weaponizing your ethnicity, you know, challenging each other with logic, not with a gun. I think that day is here. And the day is here where we work to uplift our people out of poverty. That's what the Nile Dam is all about. That's what all the you know, work and economy is all about. And that's what needs to be the focus. And my hope is that, you know, all the TPLF supporters or any other supporters of the extreme tribal politics would come to their senses and really say that we have one enemy, and that's poverty, and that we can fight that together, and realize that this foreign meddling and intervention has never helped any African country. Give me an example of any country that became wealthy or self-sufficient, you know, with handouts
Yeah,
or foreign intervention. None.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, there's a couple comments. Ermias, we're gonna get to your question next. So Sam said, "I lost so many friends because they chose their ethnicity." Okay, this is just my 2 cents. I really think Ethiopians and Eritreans need to stop being so nice to people like this. They're like, the more space you give them to say like, okay, I know there's people that suffered in Tigray. They don't care. They don't care. The more space you give them, the more bold they feel. I know them. Like, I mean, I know a lot of them. I'm not saying I know the blanket of them, but like you said, there's so many incredible people, resilient, people that we've met through this work, because it wasn't about race. It wasn't about ethnicity. It wasn't even about nationality. It was just, hey, we want to push for the truth and peace, period. Truth and peace. And then we also happen to be Ethiopians and Eritreans and people of the Horn and anti-war allies and genuine progressives. So anyone who doesn't understand, I mean, the TPLF has not been very good about covering up all their lies. Like, for somebody who wants to to know. If you're the crisis group and you need the crisis to continue, you don't care. But if you're an Ethiopian Eritrean that genuinely wants to know what is actually happening, the TPLF has slipped up enough times where you should know that they are the problem. And this whole thing, so bye. I don't miss anybody that I don't talk to anymore. They're literally such a drag. I mean, I've spent so much time trying to, help people see a different, a different perspective, and they might have qualities otherwise, but we have a core value issue. So goodbye. Life is short. It's better to be friends with people that you share values with, not those kind of just really low level ethnic ideologies. So I don't know. I really hope people are not stressing over anyone that at this point isn't at least able to put aside the politics and say, you know what, I don't agree with you, but let's at least, respect and nurture the 10, 15, 20 years of friendship or whatever it is that we have. Because you have to be stupid. You have to be stupid at this point, or you have to just have so much hate in your heart for the rest of Ethiopians and Eritreans that you can't see the truth, or you just don't have the intellectual capacity. It's one or the other, or you're just using this as a scapegoat. Let's go over to Ermias, and there's so much content actually I wanted to pull up, but so much to say. So Ermias says, question, now that TPLF seems to be backsliding on the agreement it signed, wouldn't you think it's mainly the peaceful people of Tigray who would be doubly, heck, triply screwed? Your thoughts on such a scenario? However you interpret that, what do you think?
Yeah, 100%. The people of Tigray have always been the first victims of the TPLF. It is the people of Tigray that were held hostage by the TPLF, as if they were some kind of a bargaining chip. And it is the people of Tigray that the TPLF is still using to save its behind. And, if the TPLF does backslide on this peace deal and chooses war, it is the people of Tigray that suffer. And not just the people of Tigray, the people of Amhara, the people of Afar have paid the price. These areas have been, so much infrastructure damage that it's going to take decades to rebuild everything. The trauma that the population has faced with just the sheer amount of people that have been killed. This trauma is going to take a long time to heal. And just when the people of Tigray see the light at the end of the tunnel, if the TPLF does backslide and forces a military solution into the current opportunity, yes, I agree with Ermias 100% that it would be the people of Tigray that would be backstabbed by the TPLF, which claims to represent the people of Tigray. But like I said earlier, the TPLF represents themselves, and all they want is two things: power and money.
It's so sad. It's actually such a really sad, I mean, life is so short. It's such a sad way to live. There's a lot of comments, so let's go through some of them. Salsa says, what is the intention of doing this? If they want to fight, they can fight. They sign on an agreement by their own willing. I think we've kind of answered that, so I'm going to keep going. Thomas says, TPLF thinks and believes that they would have no problem for controlling Ethiopia back to power again if Eritrea was not involved in helping Ethiopians. Your response?
Yeah, I mean, that's what psychopaths do. They think, narcissists think that they're in control of everything and that they're almighty. And that's how the TPLF sees itself. And I do agree with you that, that's why they use Eritrea as a scapegoat. Ethiopia is stronger with Eritrea by its side. You know what I mean? Remember, the TPLF, when it launched this war, it essentially had 80% of the Ethiopian military. This TPLF was the Ethiopian government like 4 years ago, right?
This is a miracle.
Yeah, and so when they retreated to Tigray, they took missiles, they took everything with them. And remember, the Northern Command was in Tigray, and so are grateful for the help that Ethiopian people are grateful for the people of Eritrea for that reason. But the TPLF, it's you can just go back and look at their rhetoric, the things they say. There's just so much ego there, and but at the end of the day, I think they've played all their cards, and I don't think that they have. I would give them credit, though. I mean, this is an entity that moved the United States to break its back for it. I mean, I've never seen the United States go this far for any African group the way they went out for the TPLF. And it's pretty incredible when you think about it.
I mean,
It
yeah,
really is.
it is. I think part of it is, have you seen a more deranged ride or die than TPLF? I mean, they hate the people of Ethiopia, including Tigray, so much. Like, this is a group that is so anti, not just Ethiopia, Eritrea, anti-Somalia, anti-Africa, and it is rooted in the country. And they're willing to drag, Africans as a whole down to the ground with this narrative. They're willing to have children killed in war in Tigray. They're willing to weaponize humanitarian aid. And we're going to play a video about that in just a bit. You couldn't find a more anti-African group in modern history right now, right? So as a proxy, they're a dream.
Yeah. Remember, even back in the 80s when they were fighting the Derg, the fascist Derg, the TPLF was more fascist, that they were actually using aid that was meant. We're talking about the 80s, the 1985 Great Famine that took the life of like 1 million people in Wallo and Tigray. They were using that. They were selling that food to arm themselves. I mean, this is how evil the TPLF is.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know the story and know it well, right? Like, this is Salam said maybe we can talk a bit more about how we can get better rather than TPLF. I hear you. I think this is you could do both. And this is what I mean by that. I want every Ethiopian Eritrean to be able to tell this story as well as you might think me or Nebiyu can do it. It is important that we are all very clear about the truth and the facts, and that we can tell it to a person that we see on the street. We can tell it. You just have to know how to tell your own story, because if not, somebody else is going to do it. So when somebody tries to come to you with humanitarian issues and essentially is regurgitating the TPLF narrative, you have to be able to refute that. And that's part of what we're doing when we are going through like the data and how they operate, so that we're clear. I'm actually going to play this video about the way that they weaponize the humanitarian aid money that was raised in the World Aid fundraiser, and then it'll give you a chance to go get some water and take a break. To Nebiyu, it's about 4 minutes, I think. Yeah, 4.5 minutes. And please, everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, and share the link. We're seeing more people come into the room. Come on in. We're going to talk about everything today, and then I want you guys to have an amazing weekend. And that also be, your just how do you say that also be your way to kind of push back against just the poison and the toxicity of the TPLF. So we're gonna play the story about the 1985 Live Aid fundraiser and how TPLF misused that money while they said that people were starving, and they were. And instead of actually feeding the people with it, they would use it to buy weapons. And so know this story, know it by heart, and be able to tell it. Nebiyu, I'll let you take a break. And you guys, please also join Patreon, my Patreon, if you haven't already, patreon.com/HermelaTV, or you can go to eoanews.com and contribute to help fund independent journalism there. So without further ado, this is a Live Aid 1985 debacle that the TPLF was head of. The ethno-fascist TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front in Tigray, Ethiopia, is once again stealing international humanitarian aid and repurposing it for war. This time it was 12 UN fuel tankers with more than 500,000 liters of fuel that were meant to be used to transport food and other essential items to the region.
This loss of fuel will impact humanitarian operations in supporting communities in all of northern Ethiopia. We condemn any looting or confiscation of humanitarian goods or humanitarian premises.
Ethiopia says TPLF militants imprisoned UN staff that resisted the looting. A statement from the Ministry of Communication also debunked a claim made by World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom, who is a, quote, known member and proponent of the TPLF, a minority ethno-fascist group in Ethiopia accused of a slew of grave crimes.
The situation is serious.
Adhanom recently claimed that a fuel shortage was hampering the distribution of humanitarian aid in Tigray, but the Ethiopian government says TPLF's theft proves that that is not true. And in fact, the TPLF is once again weaponizing humanitarian aid for its political and military agenda. Stealing and starving the people of Tigray for international attention is the TPLF story, since the group was formed in the 1970s. This 2010 BBC article talks about how they stole aid in the '84 famine and used it to buy weapons. Remember that whole We Are the World Ethiopia Famine Global concert?
There are people dying. Oh, it's time to lift the hand tonight. The greatest gift.
Yes, that one. The same TPLF that stole aid money there became the government of Ethiopia in 1991 after a 17-year war and held on with an iron fist until 2018 when it was voted out of parliament after years of mass protest. Even still, the TPLF was begged to work with the new government instead of going to a devastating war to get back into power. This is a mother begging TPLF officials not to start a war. Fast forward, and this is a USAID head of mission in Ethiopia almost exactly a year ago, talking about TPLF militants raiding a USAID warehouse in the neighboring Amhara regions.
Now know that the TPLF has every town that they've gone into, they've looted the warehouses, they've looted trucks. They have caused a great deal of destruction in all the villages they visited.
Also last year, 2 UN officials blew the whistle on who had Tedros Adhanom. UN Chief of Mission in Ethiopia, Maureen Aching, said Adhanom was bypassing the process and helping orchestrate UN humanitarian aid to go to the TPLF militants for war.
This comes from Dr. Tedros.
It was also just a year ago that the TPLF stole about 500 United Nations aid trucks, claiming they didn't return them because of a fuel shortage. Well, according to data from UN OSHA itself, they had about twice the amount of fuel they needed to return the trucks. But they didn't. Instead, as you can see on their propaganda media outlets, they used them to transport armed militants into the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions, where TPLF militias are accused of raping, pillaging, and killing residents in that area. Well, we reached out to the World Health Organization about their Director General's affiliation with the TPLF and his recent claims about a fuel shortage in Tigray. As of airtime, we haven't heard back. I'm Hermela Argawi, and this is Eyes on Africa. Thanks for watching. Please remember to hit subscribe, and please consider supporting independent journalism by going to patreon.com/HermelaTV and becoming a member. Thank you so much for your support. So you guys don't have to argue with people that see that know that story, and then still want to talk about how the TPLF should be in Tigray, right? And that they actually care about the people. So that's why we go over this over and over again. There is no reason why, I don't care who it is, a friend or a family member, cannot understand what has transpired over the last 50 years. There are plenty of people from Tigray, Ethiopia, that can talk to you, or that can talk to them and explain who the TPLF is. Kirana Afwerki in Canada is someone that I've interviewed, and he's incredible. He was, as a youth, recruited, but then left the country at an early age, had family members that were killed by the TPLF, can go through step by step and tell you how the TPLF was created. And so it's just really important that everyone's able to stand firm, stop being so nice about the story. It's become a very clear story. We all want to be able to restore our friendships and our family relationships, of course, but there's just no negotiating on what is now an obvious fact when it comes to who the TPLF is. So while Nebi takes a quick break, I'm going to go through some more of you guys' comments. Thank you so much, by the way, for joining tonight. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. So Kia said, what political system should be implemented and work for a country like Ethiopia? I think one that does not allow armed groups to take part in politics, period. You pick up a gun to make your point, it's over. You're a criminal, you're designated a criminal, you're designated a terrorist organization, and you cannot be a part of the conversation. Wait your turn, politically organize, make your case to the people, and the majority of Ethiopians have to vote for you. That's just how democracy works. And so the majority of Ethiopians are not, I do not believe, would, given the actual space for democracy to vote, would not vote for something like a TPLF or something like an OLA. That only works unless if they're actually pressured by those carrying the guns. So that's a start. And then I know, most of us are not fans of ethnic federalism, to say the least. It's a really gross system that needs to go away. It needs to be done methodically, though, and there's people that are better experts than me, like Daraja Demise, attorney, and others who can talk about how that can be reformed. Sam said, we are just counting the days in this Nairobi thing anyway. I know. It's just, we're gonna see. It's 9 days in, we've got 20 more days to go. Let's go through some more of your comments. Thank you, Testify. Alexander, how could TPLF video recorded the Hausen air unless it was planned? Hausen's another, I think, major disinformation. That's a different comment. Disinformation campaign. I've talked to people that are from Tigray that know that story well, and it appeared to be a coordinated TPLF instigated attack that then they used to mobilize the youth and saying, see, look at the Sturk regime, they're coming after us. And so again, the pain of Tigray, the suffering of Tigray is always political capital for an entity like the TPLF. Let's play a couple of more shorter pieces of content. There's an Irish diplomat that's a part of the EU. I'll have to grab his name because I've never seen him before until he came out this week and talked about how quickly he doesn't think that humanitarians going in. So let's play him first, and then we're going to play the clip from the UN that's talking about humanitarian aid access increasing.
I want to address the issue of the recently announced peace deal in northern Ethiopia. While it was announced 7 days ago, there's still no humanitarian access to Tigray. The question I want to raise is impunity. Many experts have given evidence that genocide has taken place in Tigray. And crimes committed by the Ethiopian National Defence Forces amount to genocide, an attempt to destroy the Tigrayan ethnicity. Of course, there has been violence on all sides, but only the charge of genocide is laid at the door of the Ethiopian state. Genocide is a crime of universal jurisdiction, so that any member state has the capacity to investigate, but I'm not filled with hope. My own country, Ireland, was the only one to denounce the Ethiopian regime forcefully and was targeted and threatened and subject to diplomatic expulsions. Our first priority must be humanitarian access and sustaining the peace. But surely the European Union cannot let genocide go unpunished in 2022. Thank you.
Who are who is this? Who is this person? Some diplomat, some Irish diplomat in EU. What experts? When we talk about experts that have claimed genocide, what experts? Why would a group, and I think someone actually said this really well in one of the comments, why would you sign to disarm if you genuinely believed your genocide allegations? There are plenty of Ethiopians from Tigray that are living in Ethiopia all over the country. There's government officials that are Ethiopians from Tigray. There are people that are thriving in their businesses, in education, in their lives all over Ethiopia that are from Tigray. So it doesn't, and even within Tigray, in areas where the Ethiopian National Defense Forces are controlling, life is going back to normal. I just got a message, a response from a source that is very familiar with the situation on the ground. It's at peace. There was a tweet from Ambassador Redwan, the national security advisor who also led the negotiations, in which he talked about 70% of Tigray is under the ENDF, and under that, in those areas, humanitarian aid access is increasing, just like what a UN rep just said 3 days ago.
In the meantime, our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that humanitarian access across northern Ethiopia has improved due to the cessation of hostilities. And, we had an update on that, I think, on Friday. So I can just reconfirm that our partners, they have started to provide assistance to people. But of course, as I just said, we're ready to provide more because we know that the needs there are immense.
There you go. You heard it from the horse's mouth, as they say, both from the UN and the Ethiopian government confirming it. So this Irish diplomat talking about humanitarian aid is not getting in as fast as he obviously has an agenda. And Ambassador Redwan Hussein has addressed this issue of certain Irish diplomats working against Ethiopia, spitting lies and propaganda that favors the TPLF. Here's a clip from Ambassador Redwan Hussein addressing that.
With EU, we understand we have to make clear that we still have to continue our strategic partnership. It has to do with an individual who was leading the international relationship. Otherwise, with the development aspect, we are okay, we are fine. We are grateful for that. But with regard to the international aspect, it's only one individual. We still keep on second-guessing this agreement, but still we appreciate the EU statement. Still we have to continue. We are very much grateful that the assistance will continue. We are very much grateful and hopeful that our strategic partnership will continue on that line, and we also would like to iron out some of the differences we had on this line. Otherwise, European Union has also been with us on several occasions all the way through, particularly the development aspect, and it's not because we don't appreciate the assistance. It's because we were very much committed that this negotiation had to be successful. So we did not want to bring individuals with vested interests. We're also happier with the special envoy, Annette Weber. Nothing to do with her. She was great. Her effort was appreciated. It's only some differences from her back. It might be beyond her capacity to positively contribute on the process, and also our commitment to remain with the IGAD and UN that we focused on that line. Otherwise, we are very much grateful for all you, and thank you very much.
Yeah, so we're talking about Barry Andrews, that Irish diplomat that's a part of the EU. That's who it looks like Ambassador Redwan Hussein is talking about, because that clip came out much earlier than this Barry Andrews, Irish diplomat in the EU. That speech that he just made is undermining the peace process, anti the actual information that is out there. And the ambassador has every right, Ambassador Redwan has every right to say what he did when we're talking about a country or representatives from a country that are literally spitting TPLF propaganda. So I don't know. What do you think of the role of Ireland and just, you know, or I shouldn't say a whole country, but what do you think the role of so-called diplomats like that? Is this just about money? Is that what it is?
It's been so strange why this Irish diplomats are so obsessed with Ethiopia. I don't know. I just, you know, there's got to be something behind it. It's just bizarre. This obsession of, you know, being more Catholic than the Pope, right? They know better for Ethiopians than Ethiopians themselves. And even at a time when the European Union is trying to make good with Ethiopia, you know, we're just talking about we're gonna, you know, remove their sanction, and they're gonna start giving back the aid, you know, that they were holding back. And you know, they were all laughing it up with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in Egypt at the climate seminar. And then now Irish suddenly is like the lone wolf, Ireland, you know, making this kind of accusations. And, you know, um, this is a pretty serious allegation. This guy has a serious position. He's a member of parliament at the EU representing Ireland. And to make an accusation of genocide in an official format like that, without any proof, any basis, is pretty serious. I mean, you can't just throw out this kind of accusation with impunity. So I really, really, really think that it is time the Ethiopian government, um, you know, reconsider the diplomatic relationship Ethiopia has with Ireland, because it's been pretty clear that the Ireland diplomats and administrators don't have a goodwill towards Ethiopia or the Ethiopian people.
Yeah, you know how many times he said the word genocide? Just it's insane. If there's I've learned a lot of things in the last year or two, but one of the things that I have learned is whoever is the boldest and shameless with their allegations will have their run before the truth really catches up with it, right? So it's really I see it working with a lot of Americans. If you just allege genocide, they stop critically thinking. They stop asking questions, including those in Congress. I mean, you know, sometimes I do want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt because it's a really difficult thing to navigate through information wise. But what I would say for all of us when we're now, you know, looking at new news stories about other countries or any issue, do not just stop at the allegation. I mean, it is clearly a pattern of some of folks who have ill will to just put out the worst allegation possible on a person, on an entity, knowing that a lot of people won't question it if the accusation is bold and bad enough. And I think genocide is one of those words that's, you know, really weaponized and triggers a lot of people to just stop thinking. So I want to talk a little bit about a lot of great comments. Somebody said, I lost your tweet or your comment. Said, if is Ethiopia an Irish colony? No, do you know? Are we an Irish
Last time
colony?
I checked, I mean, they're certainly acting like they're a colonizer, but Ethiopia is a sovereign state.
Yeah.
You know, and it's. I think it would be in the best interest of Ireland to start being friendly with Ethiopia instead of all this hostility. Um, you know,
So much
there's
hostility.
yeah, it's just it's crazy.
I hope the money is good. That's all I'm gonna say. I hope the money is really good for everybody because you're literally just being the worst, a horrible person. Um, and I'm assuming it is. I'm assuming it is, including those in the diaspora that continue to warmonger. I hope it's good because you're selling your soul for dollars, and those who are in the diaspora are not getting paid. Then you're an idiot, because there are plenty of people that are leading the activism that every time they tell you they're collecting money from Tigray, it's not going to Tigray. So people need to just be a little bit smarter on our end, on the Ethiopian end. Those folks that we lost, 2 years ago and haven't been able to get back. Although there's some that I think that are that aren't fully, gone yet. I want to talk a little bit about, and I see all of you guys' questions and comments. Definitely going to pull them up too. I want to talk about the disarmament portion of the peace deal, because that's still the focus here. So let me get this comment down. So the highlighted part, the disarmament activities in the schedule should be completed within 10 days from the conclusion of the meeting of the senior commanders. The 10-day period could be extended based on the recommendation of the senior commanders to be endorsed by the parties. It's going to be, we're going into the 10th day right now. And I think this is where the Ethiopian government needs to start communicating what's going on with the disarmament part. Because as we see, I don't know how much you guys are seeing it in the social media space, but we're definitely seeing it coming through different channels. When there's not communication, it's filled by unconfirmed reports, misinformation. We don't know what the source is. And so I think the Ethiopian government needs to give us an update soon, in the next day or two, saying what's up with the disarmament. Did you guys decide to change the schedule? Because the 10 days, what I know for heavy weaponry is what I understand, and then you've got 20 more days for all of it. What do you think? Oh, it's 10 days after the meeting. Okay, it's 10 days from, let's pull that up again.
Is that from like the Kenya meeting?
It sounds like it might be the case, yeah. Agreed to undertake the disarmament of the heavy armaments of the TPLF combatants as a matter of priority, based on detailed schedule to be agreed upon between the senior commanders of the parties. Okay.
That's talking about Kenya.
Okay. All right. Let me.
Yeah, I know that both sides have said that, or recognized the complexity of the process, and that even when they announced the agreement, that getting the message down to all the combatants, communicating it down, they said that there was some complexity and challenges. So but I've also seen some videos and photos in some areas of Tigray where some TPLF combatants are voluntarily coming and turning in their weapons to ANDF, and actually like eating with the ANDF members, and like getting cigarettes from them and smoking and just like hanging out. I gotta tell you, that kind of broke my heart. Like, these soldiers don't have any grudges. Like, they're just like, as soon as this is declared, you're seeing this, and they're kids. They're like 18, 19-year-olds. They're just little kids, and they're like just together and not killing each other. I'm like, wow, there was just some deeper message in that just kind of touched me, like, in a deeper way. But I think it's happening already, and the combatants, the rank and file, are ready. But it's a difficult process. It's a rugged area, Tigray. It's a mountain, and the rebels and everybody's kind of spread out. But I do agree that there needs to be more communication, proactive communication from the Ethiopian government side. And that could be done better, because we've seen in the past, when the government is silent or quiet and not as responsive or not proactive, that other narratives that are not true emerge. And it's harder to disprove something after it takes a hold, So I think at this time, I would, if there's anybody from the Ethiopian government listening, a daily briefing would be very appropriate. at this time, by someone like Bileni, and to just let us know, let the world know what's going on, and really debunk all these lies that are being told by some powerful entities like the Irish. And just tweeting about it is not enough. I think formal press conferences would be nice. Ambassador Redwan has been pretty good on Twitter, but I think English press conferences would be good. There's also some really good Amharic coverage coming out of Ethiopia, but the world doesn't speak Amharic.
Right. And they pretend like they don't hear it when they don't want to hear it, when it's not something that they want to hear. I mean, they absolutely have interpreters, but often those interpreters are probably TPLF supporters or sympathizers within their ranks in the BBCs and the CNN. So they're not objective as well, right? So it's
yeah. And then the mainstream journalists are lazy. They're not going to go through the pain of translating this, and then Ethiopian media. So just make it easy. Throw it in their face.
Yeah.
Do this. When Beleni speaks, she makes tier 1 media almost always. So why not speak more often?
Absolutely. Yeah, she's good. I don't know why they don't. I get it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work to piece together even one presser, but it just seems like a critical time to really capitalize on this moment of peace. Like I was saying, Nebi, when you had stepped away, I was able to confirm that there is in fact still peace in Tigray, that there isn't any active fighting. You just brought up the fact that there are videos of former TPLF combatants sitting with Ethiopian National Defense Forces and eating. A lot of them are young on both sides. I saw some of the soldiers at different events when I was in Addis, and that's what struck me is how young they are. It always is surprisingly a thing that makes me emotional, but it's because I just think they're so young, like, they're so young. And if we weren't at war, they would be going off to college, or they would still be soldiers, but not soldiers that had to worry about whether they're going to make it to next year because there's an active conflict. And so same on the TPLF side, Kadani Afwerk, like I said, was in his young years, had been recruited and lost his brother actually because of them. And he himself had been imprisoned for a very long time. And, I was talking to people like him, and he said, listen, if somebody came to me back in the days, or came to somebody that I loved, or someone else that had been fighting for so long, and they said, hey, it's over, you don't have to do this anymore, said I would have been like, it would have been like a prayer answered, right? So I do think that one of the things I've also learned and still struggle with is not looking at the diaspora, the diaspora who claims to be from Tigray, to hear these voices like the Getachos, the Tedros and all these other, no-name activists in the diaspora, and not equating that with the people on the ground who've actually been living a nightmare for 2 years. Like that whole northern Ethiopia region, including Tigray, parts of the Amhara region, Afar, have literally woke up to a nightmare 2 years ago. And their experiences are real. It's day to day, and they don't have the luxury of just, talking about it online. And there is no indication that there is resistance among those in Tigray to this peace. Now, one thing that did stick out to me in Ambassador Redwan Hussein's recent tweet, where he was talking about the humanitarian aid that went in, is he said, and I'm going to pull it up right now, and I want to get your reaction. He said 70% of Tigray is under ENDF. Aid is flowing like no other times, even to the areas not yet held by ENDF. 35 trucks of food and 3 trucks of medicine arrived in Shire. Flights are allowed. Services are being reconnected. The agreement just provides opportunities to enhance services. No hindrance whatsoever regarding aid. Some corners don't seem happy by the fact that African wisdom's brought us success in Pretoria and hustling to spoil the spirit. Your reaction, Nebi?
I mean, it's he's what reason at this point, after a peace deal is signed, what reason would the Ethiopian government have to intentionally block aid or medicine to the people of Tigray? The very people that the government is getting ready to govern. Tigray, the 70% is already under ANDF. Why would a government that's carrying its own people want to starve them? It doesn't make any sense. And he's just giving out the facts if there's anybody that would listen. Look, this notion of siege and humanitarian aid being blocked has been a weapon. That's something that has been weaponized by the TPLF and their handlers. And it's just a demonstration that they still think that it works. That's why they're using it, especially those that are trying to either sabotage the deal or trying to get something out of it. Whatever their intention is, it's not a good intention. But I was just really pleased to see the ambassador break it down like that and give some factual numbers.
Yeah, that was really helpful. It did. What also stood out to me in that tweet, though, is so 30% of Tigray is still under some sort of rebel control, right? I've asked some questions for updates and clarity on that. Again, we're within the 30-day window of the peace agreement, so I'm going to go all in on hope that this is going to get seen through, regardless of these detractors on the outside who have no real skin in the game. And I'm just curious what that looks like. So they obviously still have their guns in these 30% areas, but they're not fighting. So that's good, right? Because I've been able to confirm that there is peace and there's no fighting. So I'm just really curious how that is going to play out. All right, let's go through some comments. Let's see how there's a lot going on here in the comment section. Thank you guys for tuning in. You're amazing. Thank you for all the support. Let's see. Oh, so there's a couple questions about this. I'm a little bit concerned, just a little bit. The Ethiopian government needs to be very strict about like checking all the aid that goes in, making sure there's no weapons that are going in, making sure there's no fuel that goes missing, making sure there's no humanitarian aid trucks that go missing. Because that's all I hear when I see people like that random Irish diplomat and the activists in the diaspora saying humanitarian aid, unhindered humanitarian aid. Yeah, the last time that happened, we lost all of this humanitarian aid, and not just lost it, because that would be one thing, but it actually came back to kill people. So how concerned are you about what's going through in this aid and who it's going to?
That's a big concern. It is a big concern because we know this is not speculation. We know for a fact that aid has been used in the past. In Ethiopia and other countries throughout Africa, aid has been used as an excuse or as a pretext to pass on weapons. It's been used to pass on satellite equipments, phones, and technology to help armed groups. And we've even seen in other parts of Africa and potentially in Ethiopia as well, where even humanitarian flights have been used to airdrop weapons in remote areas to rebel groups. This was done in Libya. That's how they assassinated Gaddafi, is they were airdropping weapons to the rebel groups that were fighting him. And then they eventually started bombing Libya until they assassinated their leader and overthrew the government and turned the country into a failed state. And we remember in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian government announcing that they shot down a plane that was headed from Sudan to Shire with weapons in it. So it's very critical that any kind of weapon that goes into this region is monitored and inspected and that there must be a process, and not to say, it doesn't have to be in a way that's going to delay aid, but there has to be due diligence because there's no trust. You cannot trust these foreign entities that are trying to operate there because they don't have goodwill towards Ethiopia, and we know what they're up to. So I think that's a very good point. It's very important. It's also very important to make sure that Welkait is secured and continues to be secured because you cannot allow the TPLF to have an international border to smuggle weapons in. I think that's why there's been a lot of focus by the TPLF towards Welkait. But, if the TPLF is to, my hope is that the leaders would just go into exile and the TPLF would cease to exist. But if they really do have a dream of remaining as a political entity, absolutely the Ethiopian government has to make sure, because this is a matter of national security, absolutely make sure that the TPLF leaders are not going to recreate themselves and find a creative way to rearm themselves. And they're very creative and very resourceful. So, that's definitely a huge liability and risk that needs to be mitigated.
Absolutely. These people can't be trusted. I mean, I've only been in the game for 2 years, and so you guys know it longer than I have. Cannot be trusted, cannot have guns, need to make their points without it. And Ethiopia will not be able to actually thrive if an entity like this is allowed to continue to exist. They've made it very clear in the last 50 years that they're not there to do right by Ethiopia and the Ethiopian people, and have made it just beyond clear in the last 2 years that it's either Ethiopia and Eritrea or this group. There's really nothing in the middle. And I really hope Ethiopians don't forget, forgive, but just do not forget what these people are capable of, what they've actually done. I mean, it is enraging that they're still reverting back to the same playbook. They have caused so many lives to disappear, so many families to be broken in the last 2 years and more. So many mothers were on Tigray Media House and other TPLF affiliated media saying they sent 5 children to the war. How many of them came back? So you've got parents and mothers that are now sitting here with an empty home, may not even see their kids come back. I mean, and still they hit the playbook again on repeat and have the audacity. I mean, I keep saying it, the level of moral deprivation is shocking to me. I've just never seen anything like this. I mean, most of you guys know I grew up mostly in the US, came here when I was young, and I've been in news for a long time. I've studied a lot of things, but a lot of different issues. But this, I don't know a group that is this consistently untenable, but pretends to be something so different on the international stage. I don't know. I don't think Eritreans are gonna forget, but I really hope Ethiopians don't forget. And I say that coming from a really good place. I think it's a broad generalization, but Ethiopians are incredibly forgiving. And I would argue Eritreans are too, although they maybe forget less. But I saw people among Ethiopians saying all right, now we can let them vote for who their leaders, and it's wait, what? We're not talking about voting right now. I'm sorry, that is just an objective approach. This war is not completely done. You've got 30% of Tigray where the rebels are still carrying guns. You've got a traumatized society. You've got a society that parts of which may be vengeful because of everything they've lost. I mean, they're probably really angry at the TPLF also, but there may be some anger. Of course, there's going to be some anger on the Ethiopian government also because of everything that they've been hearing for the last 2 years. So I don't know. I mean, I guess what do you think of that part? Are we gonna be able to remember this and moving forward? Because giving them any amount of space is only going to take us back so many steps.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The Ethiopian people are forgiving, um, you know, and sometimes forget. I think because that's it's just a forgiving culture. I think, but I think that we have to think like the TPLF in a way to defeat the TPLF, and the TPLF has just a very shrewd way of operating. The TPLF has a way of saying whatever it needs to say to get its way. And I think that too many lives have been lost. Too much suffering has happened to just forget all this and allow the TPLF to potentially do it again. You know, I think that's why it's so important to memorialize all these terrible events that happened. The loss of civilians, because we have to remember this, and we have to, you know, uh, make sure generations remember this so it doesn't happen again. And I don't mean this in a way to gloat or in a way to, continue to pass on the legacy of pain, but in a way, in a truthful way that really tells the truth of what happened, and to preserve it for history in a truthful way, and in a way that is not meant to just make sure we hold grudges. There's a difference between holding a grudge and remembering, you know, and there's a difference between forgiving and not forgetting. So I think wisdom is due here. I think we need to exercise wisdom, and I think as people, our people are wise to know this and to remember this in a way. But I guess we just have to remember. Encourage our people to remember in a way, like I said, not in a way to hold grudges, because that's negative, and we don't need any more negative energy. Um, you know, yeah, I mean, just kind of look at the United States, the Civil War, the it's the South rebelled against the North, and they had that deadly civil war in the United States, right? And the South lost. They made a peace deal, became one country again. There's memorials everywhere to remember the American Civil War. They remember it, but they've forgiven each other. The North and the South are not at a war right now. There's cultural differences, obviously, but yeah, that's what I would say. But it's just compassion and forgiveness is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, and I mean, we're just we do that already, and I think it's a beautiful thing. But like I said, as someone who's been in it for just 2 years, more aggressively for a year, I do look at it as sometimes I'm like, are you already forgetting? Like,
I get it. Yep.
you know this,
right.
Longer than me. Like, do not give these people any space. There is no there we just cannot. But it's already one thing that it's written into the peace deal that they are allowed to stay as a political entity, but that's it. Like, make your case, say whatever you want to say, as long as you're not killing people and hurting people in order to get your political agenda across. It's a democracy. I mean, in so many ways, even there was a essentially like a pro TPLF protest, a small one, after one of their generals died in Addis Ababa, and they were rallying in Addis, and the government didn't touch them, which is fine. I mean, that's good. Like, that's good. I mean, it's irritating, but it's good that there's space to be able to do that. And I do hope in general there's more and more space. I think the more interference there is by the West and others on the outside, the more the more restrictive a government is. So I think we should all constantly be pushing back against the West and the EU and other entities that are trying to get involved, because they're probably, you know, implicating certain people inside the country. Maybe they're trying to communicate with people inside the country, and then the government like does this blanket, you know, response, and then you arrest the wrong people, and then now you've got more people that are irritated because of that. So there's just a lot. Okay, let's take a positive turn a little bit to the ENDF that's in Tigray right now. These are pictures that were shared by Ambassador Redwan Hussein, and they are helping harvest. These are the same people, or some of the same people, that were attacked in Northern Command. And it is true that they were an integral part of Tigray. I've talked with folks that have lived there that say they were a part of the community, that they would go around and help farmers harvest. You can see some of them, they're still fairly young. During certain occasions, they would collect money and go spend time with the elderly. They were, I mean, they were not just soldiers. In times of peace, they were actually very involved in their community, and it's great to see it again. You know, in pictures. I believe that was around Aksum. This is how it should be. And again, that's
Beautiful.
another thing not to forget, is how the soldiers were treated. Like these are people that served the country for 20 plus years, and what the TPLF did is also something that we should not forget when it comes to the Northern Command. What did you think when you saw some of these pictures?
It's so heartwarming, and that's not just Aksum. They were doing that in Aksum, Adwa, and Shire. There was the NDF soldiers. I guess this is what the West defines as genocide. You know.
Oh my gosh! Like what?
Yeah, and you know, I remember seeing pictures like this before the war, before the Northern Command was attacked. This was a regular. I mean, this ENDF soldiers that were stationed at the Northern Command. I mean, it was 20 years of no war, no peace with Eritrea. They didn't really have anything to do. The soldiers are used to helping the farmers. They did this regularly. I remember seeing pictures like this over the years, where when it's harvest time, I mean, that's kind of the culture. During harvest time, the whole village comes out, right? And the soldiers would join them and would do this. And you know, I saw that, and it was like, hey, we're going back to normal. You know, life is getting back to normal. And you know, it just kind of made me happy. It was heartwarming. I loved it. I loved seeing those pictures.
Me too. Yeah, I'd heard about it before the war too. I just wasn't as engaged. And you know, we've heard from the partners of some of these soldiers that were killed during the Northern Command attack, and how they were just lost, you know, in this region that they called home. And many of them are actually from Tigray, born and raised in Tigray, and either their husband or wives were a part of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. And that day, they were just absolutely betrayed, and didn't even know who to turn to, because they were betrayed by the very people that they were working next to and had lived with for decades. And how it was not until the Ethiopian government actually entered Mekelle that they were even able to speak about what was happening to their families. So I think that's amazing, a sign of normalcy, and so far so good is what I'd say with the peace agreement. I mean, I don't like that the usual suspects are trying to create conflict. I heard one of the TPLF activists was on a TRT interview. Let me not be smiling when I'm saying this, but I just think their lives are so insane. She came on saying, I just got a call from a family member that one of my family members was starved to death. where, like, first of all, I thought you couldn't talk to anybody in Tigray. One, they're so shameless. I know people who talk about my family this, my family that, and then you actually like look into it and no, they're lying about any sort of knowing about any sort of atrocity that happened to their family. So if somebody tries to say that, push back. Like I said, the accusation is so bold that it's hard to respond without sounding like a crazy person. But they're the crazy ones. I mean, you come on air on mainstream media and that's your entry point. Make your case. Make your case. Make your case about the larger issue, not gaslighting the panel that you're on and the anchor who what are they going to say to you? Like, they're my condolences, right? Like, so it's such a cheating, low level way of actually making your case about the larger conflict. Yeah, I mean, they're liars. This is a case of, I mean, when a people lie constantly, yeah, when you tell me something like that, I'm gonna say you're probably lying. So be it.
Professional liars. You know, when I was looking at the pictures, the India soldiers helping the Tigray farmers harvest, I looked for that article news on the AP and Reuters. I couldn't find it. Henry, what happened? I
They're like,
looked
where we
everywhere.
don't see that? Oh, is there peace there? Like, we don't see that. Like,
But wouldn't it be nice if they actually reported stuff like that? You know, but then you see people like that the her, getting access on tier one media, telling
Mhm.
stories like that. You know,
Right, right.
and it's just really unfortunate. Sometimes there's people that I'm sure have families that back in Tigray that are part of the TPLF combatants.
Right.
And sometimes when if you remember TPLF combatants, especially after TPLF took over Mekelle, they the TPLF combatants had taken off their uniform and they were dressed in civilian clothes
Mm-hmm.
and engaging in war, which in itself is like a war crime
Mm-hmm.
because you can't go to war in civilian clothes because that, in a sense, you're endangering civilians because your opponent is not going to be able to tell the difference between civilians and combatants. They're fighters and combatants, but especially as soon as they die, they're civilian massacred. And we've seen that over and over again, where it's a war zone. They're fighting, engaging with the TPLF, with the ENDF, and then the TPLF combatants are defeated, and then suddenly they're in civilian uniform but armed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, here's a massacre. So there's just so many crazy things. But I just really would like to see some of the people like her that are making these claims, just really prove it. And that won't be too hard to do once the infrastructure is fixed, so we have access.
Right.
Like,
They're clearly, I mean, if they're talking to someone and they're tweeting out photos and videos of things that they claim to be happening, then you can, with the drone attack that Professor Kandea claimed, targeted people, what did he show? It was a guy's arm with like a little bit of a sore that could have been from like a rock, not a drone. So show it. We looked at that, that 4-minute piece on the way that the TPLF stole money that was meant to go to people in Tigray that were starving in the 80s. The suffering of Tigray is the TPLF capital. So, I know Sanu, she said, watch my words. Yes, in terms of, showing sensitivity. I have all this sensitivity for the people in Tigray. But when an accusation or an alleged suffering comes out of a TPLF spokesperson, I can't hear it. I'm sorry, I can't hear it. I'm not going to waste time pretending like I actually believe them. If I come off, harsh because of it, so be it. There's plenty of good sources of information, reliable sources of information. Solomon Wadagarima, Roini Sadik, Ethiopians from Tigray, the defense minister, all these people in and outside of government, when they tell me something's happening in Tigray and they're worried about what's happening in Tigray, I listen. So the source matters. And I don't have a yulunta, and I mean, I know what you're saying, Sunu, but I don't have yulunta about it. If it's coming from these obvious liars, bullies, warmongers, I just don't have I don't have to pretend like it's true, because chances are it's not. So maybe there's a different way to do that or say that, but I mean that's really the fact of the matter. All right, a few more comments and then I'm gonna let you go, Nabiye. I know, long night. This is okay, so I want to show you the part I was talking about in the New York Times article that was written two days ago by the crisis group CEO. Biden must ensure Ethiopia does not return to war was the title of that. And in it, they say, the Ethiopian government has pledged to allow unhindered aid to Tigray, to restore telecommunications and electricity in Tigray, and to secure Ethiopia's borders against foreign incursions. A possible promise that Eritrean forces would withdraw. Don't you think that's a leap? That's a leap.
An absolute leap. Absolute leap. I mean, for the crisis group has been fueling the conflict for the 2 years. So nothing that comes out of that group surprises me, to be honest with you. They have no shame, and they should, they've been, I mean, they've been on Eritrea's case, on an Ethiopian case for the past 2 years, shamelessly. And what really, really bothers me is the fact that people like this, we can prove to anyone that they've been chronic liars, pathological liars on Ethiopia, that continue to be quoted by newspapers, and they continue to be featured on media as Horn of Africa experts. I mean, how insulting is this? It's just really so insulting. It's very upsetting. It shows the utter disregard they have, this media entities have for Africa, for the people of Ethiopia. Like, we can't speak for ourselves, that we need the crisis group that's actually literally feeling the crises has to speak for us. I mean, they care more for our people than we do, apparently. I mean, so
yeah.
I
want to get your thoughts on how we should deal with media, because there's a part in me. Okay, so the general, I think thought is, when what looks like a mainstream media outlet, calls you to speak on Ethiopia or Eritrea, it's something that you should do because it's an opportunity to talk to that audience. But sometimes I think when it comes to going on with certain people, certain clear propagandists, I wonder if the thing to do is say no, because you've got people like, the Ma'azas in the TPLF activism world who are memorized and so propagandistic, and really, like I said, just opening with something like so personal like that you aren't proving, and then basically shutting down the person you're on the panel with because you said something happened personally in your life. I don't know. I wonder if the thing to do is to say, I'm not going with that person. Why are we still going on media with certain people? I don't know. I'm conflicted. Sometimes I get why we're doing it because it's an opportunity to talk to the audience. But other times I feel like we're legitimizing their voices by going on with them. What do you think?
Well, I think I see both points. Obviously, I see both points. But I think that those voices need to be challenged, and those voices need to be checked. And this is a fight for the hearts and minds of the American people. This is a fight for the hearts and minds of the European people. That their government is intruding into this Ethiopian affairs, African affairs. at the end of the day, their population, for the American government, for the U.S. government to continue to act like this, it needs the support of the people, the American people, right? And to get the American people on board, they got to, get the American people's consent. And how they do that is through media, through propaganda, and through, featuring people like that are going to tell the stories. By the way, this personal stories, and if you've ever taken a PR class, Hermie, like marketing 101, is that to connect to an audience, you tell a personal story. That's just PR 101. And you see this TPLF pundits, talking heads going out, telling this, dubious personal stories. They're following a certain formula.
Yes.
And that tells you there's somebody behind training them, giving them talking points, telling them how to act, telling them how to talk, telling them how to connect to the American audience. So I think that it's important that we engage, but I don't know that we always have the right people representing us in this medias. I think you've done an amazing job, appearing on a number of medias, just really confronting them and telling the truth. But we've had other times where it's been such a good opportunity, but we just haven't had the right people there. So I guess I lean towards saying it's important to be there to confront them, but we need the right people because you're dealing with professionally trained, marketing, PR company prepared people, seasoned professionals, and you cannot be an amateur in this game. So all I got to say is we need to confront it and we need to step up our game.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you need us, Nebu and I are here. We're ready. I've said I will go on with anybody.
That's right.
From the TPLF activism world. There's people that said they refused to go on with me because I would break up their memorization. The robot would just go haywire. We all can start with personal stories. If the opportunity comes and you don't know who to go to, please feel free to reach out to Nebu and I. I know Nebu is always willing to make the time, and same. Thank you, Khalid and Mass. Appreciate the support. Okay, let's do a few more and then let's
rapid fire.
Rapid fire, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's see. What if you see any that you like, let me know. TPLF and their puppets are 100% depend on foreigners. Thinking Mr. White Man will do the job. It's true. It's really sad. Bandahula. That's what I say. It's really gross, actually. Get some confidence. What's your response?
Yeah, no, 100%. That's been their trademark. Is being the proxy for this foreign forces. And that's how they've made it this far. That's how they've ruled over the Ethiopian people for 3 decades. And that's how they've been able to wage this war for 2 years. And that's how they've been saved now. And given an opportunity, a saving face, and impunity to walk away with amnesty if they know what to do with it.
That's the crazy thing. They don't even know how to take such a gift like that and just, I would, in the world where I had any power to shift anything, Getachew Reda has the opportunity to rewrite his legacy if he would just go straight, just go straight. You signed an incredible deal, a peace deal, one that's going to bring peace for all of Ethiopia. I'm sure he's facing lots of pressure from the inside and from the outside. We're looking at it, but you've got the guarantee of your safety. That was a part of how they got out of the U.S. The Tigray on U.S. military vehicles, but already just going left and right.
Yep.
It's unfortunate. Let's see a few more comments. Rapid fire. Yes, Mess said you tried to reach out to domestic popular radio stations to disclose the fake big media. We could do more, but we have.
Yeah.
The one is the best interview, which will benefit the. Okay, sorry, I don't know what that meant to say. Let's go through some of the ones I'd marked from earlier. Khalid said, "How do I become your BFF, W?"
Hey, Khalid. Khalid with the Eritrea. We're already BFFs.
Right? I thought we were already Twitter
That's
BFF,
right.
Khalid. Thanks for the support too. What do you think of the Joe Biden's promise to give Egypt 500 million and to the rest of Africa 100 million? That was just announced, something like that. I'm not sure if that's the exact. Egypt.
I haven't seen that. I
Yeah,
missed that.
I haven't seen much. If TPLF is the proxy in the Horn of Africa, Egypt has been the proxy to Africa. That's my take on that. So
Egypt gets like 3 billion. I mean, 500 million is nothing. They get like 3 billion a year.
Yeah.
So maybe that's in addition to that. Egypt gets more money than any other country except Israel from the United States.
That's interesting. Yeah. And, there's a whole other conversation about the way Egypt sees itself, on the continent of Africa.
That's our next struggle, y'all. Like that we have to resist, because Egypt has a pretty big, strong lobby in DC as well. So that's why we got to support APAC, and then that's why we continue to advocate and lobby for Ethiopia, because I'm telling you that GERD situation. I mean, Eugene talked about this when we did that No More Roundup in Denver. I mean, if you remember that speech he made about how connecting the whole the super interest of the West on Ethiopia itself may seem bizarre, but it all is connected to this Ethiopia being on the cusp of gaining energy independence, energy sovereignty, and then Egypt's issue with Ethiopia developing the Nile and all that stuff. So there's a lot. That's a loaded geopolitical subject with Egypt that y'all have to prepare once you're done with the TPLF. That's going to be the next battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're in it for the long run, as I keep saying, but it's okay. There's so many good people here, and we're gonna have more people, the younger generation that's gonna come up very well educated about the politics of Ethiopia and the geopolitics. I think there were a lot of people, like including myself, that didn't fully understand because we weren't as engaged. There wasn't enough English language media explaining to us what was going on. The TPLF and TPLF-led EPRDF regime was incredibly oppressive. I know it was just flying under the radar for me because and my mom made it a point to not talk politics because she said at a very young age, she realized that it's a dirty game. Was born and raised in Tigray at a time where war broke out when she was very young and all that stuff. So it wasn't really talked about. And I hear a lot of Ethiopians in general just weren't talking about politics in their homes because they just didn't want their kids to get caught up in all the toxicity. But I think the war kind of forced a level of education. So in the future, there's going to be more and more people that can participate.
Yeah, about the funding, the 500 million, that I just want to say one more thing. I think we need to start thinking about aid in a real way. Aid is the golden handcuff. The more money we get, if Egypt gets $500 million more than the rest of Africa, Egypt is more slave than the rest of Africa. The more money you get, the more subjugated you become, because you're not getting anything for free. It's not free. Aid is not free. It comes with strings. And it's actually, especially with the current administration and U.S. aid with Samantha Power, it literally is part of the foreign policy strategy to influence geopolitics. So the less aid Ethiopia gets, the less aid Africa gets, the more independent and sovereign we become, the better off we are. And that's why Eritrea has been very successful in maintaining sovereignty, is because it refuses to take aid.
Yeah, it's that the self-sustaining, the self-reliance is what outrages much of the West about Eritrea. And when and the current prime minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, has also spoken to the Ethiopian people many times about not relying on aid. And I remember Senator Chris Coons from Delaware was doing a write-up, and check your messages, Nebia, was doing a write-up about what what the PM Abiy Ahmed had said, and he was so outraged about the element that said where Abiy was saying, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was saying that the country doesn't want to be reliant on aid anymore. And it was just like, what? I think it was hilarious how angry the senator was just about that simple fact. So whatever makes them angry, we know the State Department doesn't like no more. We know that they love forcing humanitarian aid on the people, and so those should be things that we continue to push forward with no more, and then to move away from aid. A new one of the things that's entering the news cycle in a different way is another liberation issue or liberation association issue in Ethiopia, another armed group that's operating in Ethiopia. What do we know about the fight against OLA?
The OLA, the Oromo Liberation Army, the Oromo Liberation Front, Shane, whatever you want to call them, is really the TPLF's little brother. And it's just really curious that as TPLF is agreeing to the terms of surrender and basically giving in, now the past few days, the entire talk has been about OLA. There's been news articles coming out and things like that. It's another proxy. It's another tool to disintegrate Ethiopia. We've talked about earlier geopolitics with Egypt, the GERD, Ethiopian effort to become energy sovereign, energy sovereignty, food sovereignty. All this is being seen as a threat. The Oromo Liberation Army, the OLA, has never cared about the Oromo people, just like the TPLF never cared about the Tigrayan people. In fact, the OLF is worse than the TPLF. The TPLF has the military capability to engage militarily with the Ethiopian government. They are fighting with the government. The OLF is a bunch of cowards that don't have the capacity to fight the Ethiopian military. So what they do is they go around and kill civilians. They go around and pick on Amhara civilians and Walega, and they massacre men, women, children, pregnant women viciously. This is terrorism. This is terrorism. And yes, Sam is saying that OLA Shane doesn't have an agenda in the first place. Yeah, what is their agenda? No one knows. Their agenda is to kill, to massacre. And, it's just really unfortunate and sad that the people that are being killed, especially the Amhara people and Walega, that are being hunted down and massacred, are living there because it's their country, and they're being called settlers and all this and that, and being hunted down. If the OLA was a real thing, they would engage the Ethiopian military, fight the Ethiopian military. That's what real men do, but they're cowards. So, but as far as the Western intrusion, we cannot underestimate, we cannot overlook the influence of the West. Remember, let me take you back about exactly a year ago. It might actually even be this week last year when the 9 Uber drivers were out at Washington, D.C. Some of those people are OLA. The State Department knows them. The United States knows them. The intelligence community knows them, and they're enabled, right? So I think that, I don't want to give them more air than they deserve or prop them up. But the fact that they're going after helpless civilians is just absolutely barbaric, and that all Ethiopians must come together to protect our people in Walega, our people in Benshangul, and everywhere. So it is a big threat. And as long as we have this type of groups that are willing to work with as a proxy for foreign forces that want to destabilize Ethiopia, we'll never have peace. So I think that that definitely needs to be a big focus, and for the movement as well as a whole. Ethiopians at home and abroad must come together and really reject that, really terrible thing that's being done by this oil forces. And they have their own sympathizers in the diaspora as well. Just like the TPLF supporters, there's some OLA supporters. They're not as sophisticated or as strong as the TPLF, but that's why our unity and consistency and resilience is absolutely important.
Yeah, this is also a good time. This will be the one more serious question, and then if you guys just want to have other couple more comments, we'll take them. Tedros said, if we don't address the source of the problem, which is the Constitution, we can't blame OLA. Your response?
Yeah, Tedros, I mean, he hit the nail on the head. An ethnic constitution, an ethnic-based politics is really outdated. It's medieval. Ethiopia is the only country in the world that practices ethnic politics in a way that it does. And the fact that we have a constitution like that has institutionalized tribalism. So what we have is institutionalized tribalism. That's no different than apartheid, the old apartheid South Africa. So we should be outraged that a country like Ethiopia, this is not just a run-of-the-mill country. Ethiopia is a big country of 120 million. That makes it the second largest country in Africa and the 12th largest in the world. And for a country like that, for a huge country like that to be ruled by such a medieval, outdated constitution that was developed by the TPLF, that has to be retired. Now, I understand that you can't just, take out the magic wand and flip. Oops, there you go. Change the constitution. I understand that cannot be done. I understand there's a process that must be followed, but it has to absolutely be a top priority to amend the constitution in a way where Ethiopians are not divided by their ethnicity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that after this peace negotiation is completed, I think there are going to be more people that call on the government to take a look at the Constitution and start the process of at least adding some amendments and the potentially overhauling it once the entirety of Tigray is under the Ethiopian government control and the control over the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. One of the things that Deraja Demise, the attorney, was saying about why it hadn't happened already, why the Constitution hadn't changed, is, well, you've got this whole region that's under an occupation, and how can you have a constitution for an entire country if a region is not a part of it? So there's going to come a time where that's no longer the case, and so that is, I think that really is going to be like the next chapter in terms of what people want to see and what they care about once we have complete peace. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We're going to end with the piece from the Uber drivers because you brought it up, and I want everybody to laugh the rest of the night away. Have a wonderful weekend. So let's take a look at this. It'll be our last point of discussion, and we'll wrap.
With all the fronts, recognizing the problem and the widespread situation and the genocide, and the next step would be to reorganize ourselves and totally dismantle the existing government either by force or by negotiation, whatever they wish, and then settle transitional government as soon as possible. That's my name is Mahmoud Ugas. I'm from Somali States Force.
Mahmoud, M-A-H-M-O-U-D, and your last name, sir?
Ugas, U-G-A-S.
And sir, you said that you would need to, the aim is to totally...
Where do you think Muhammad is today?
Hey, I think you should find him and bring him on the show.
I would love to. I feel like he just got caught up in some stuff he did not understand. Who knows what his story is?
Poor guy.
He said he pieced together some words and called it a sentence.
Wait, that was at the press room. This is in Washington, the capital of the United States. A group openly in front of media declaring that they're about to overthrow a government.
Right.
The United States Constitution does not allow this, by the way. Especially does not allow anyone within the United States to conspire to overthrow the government of a friendly nation. That's actually a law. And Ethiopia, as far as we know, is a friendly nation to the United States. So that was just the lowest of the low. That was funny, though. That was very funny. Yeah, poor guy, poor Muhammad.
Muhammad was not ready. They did not prepare him for what he would. Why wouldn't they write a statement for him? I mean, I don't know if he can read
and
or
just
not.
Have him read.
Yeah,
you're making too much sense, Hermie. Come on.
We might. The way we're seeing a lot of round twos and round threes, we might see Uber 2.0s popping up.
You might.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet you they probably expected some softball questions too. What I really want to know is how the heck did they get all those media people in that press room?
Exactly. That is. It wouldn't enrage me. And thank you, Abby. It would be, it's something that we could just get past and say, hey, it's a TPLF, created event. A friend said that they're gonna leave and join the Somali State Force. Where are they at though? Like, where is even this force? Like, who are these people? So it would be something that we could just kind of be flippant about if it was just a TPLF activist created entity. But like you said, Reuters was there, New York Times was there. I'll give it to the last reporter. She said, wait, did you just say that you were going to dismantle the government by diplomacy or by force? And then he didn't know what to say because she actually asked a real question. I can't imagine.
I think he said, yes, however they want it. I think that's what he said. It was like a menu. I will choose. Unbelievable.
However they want it. It was really something else.
Yeah, we need that band come together. We need to see a reunion, guys. Come on, let's find them all.
Right.
Let's bring them on the Hermela show here. What do you think?
I say, come on. I want to know, because here's the thing. I actually really believe there's a lot of people that have been entrapped into this world, right? Like, I would say I was entrapped early on, and it may not have worked out so well for me. You know what I mean? Like, it could have gotten worse. Somebody said call Uber to find them. Okay, first of all, I need you guys to stop insulting Uber drivers, because Uber is a real job. It's an honorable job, and it's a great service that a lot of us use. And these people are not even that. Like, they're not even actually working. They're getting paid to show up in DC and say some crazy stuff about dismantling an overseas government by force. More of that, please. Let's see. AZ said, hey, I gotta catch an Uber back home. Don't get me in trouble. Exactly. Don't. I'm very pro Uber drivers. Yeah, someone said stop insulting Uber. Yeah. Okay, this is what I was saying. Would love to have them on because, or anyone on that says, hey, listen, like, I didn't know what I was walking into.
That would be awesome, actually. That would be great. Yeah.
We need to pursue this line of interview. I mean, hopefully their check is cleared so they can now talk about it.
Somebody on the comment said he's in Cairo.
He's at COP27. We still got him to the United Nations Climate Change Conference. You know what? He probably is. He's probably in Nairobi.
Hey, yeah.
Preparing for the next presser. He's probably thinking, I'm gonna do better next time. I wasn't ready. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Nebiye, for spending this time with us.
Thank you. That was Friday happy hour.
Yes, that was Friday happy hour. That's it. I hope you guys were able to laugh and, you know, definitely continue to do the work that you're doing, pushing back against disinformation. Do not let up on that on social media. Call your representatives, all of that. Continue to do what we're doing. This peace deal is being undermined by the same entities that have fueled this conflict, and I don't think we should let up, but also laugh at some of the laziness of this propaganda, and hope you enjoy your weekend and spend time with your families and your friends and relax. And, you know, as we're moving forward into peace, I feel like that is, you know, they say the best revenge is living well. Live well. Don't let these people keep you from enjoying your life. Ethiopia is going to be all right. Tigray is in peace. The rest of Ethiopia is in peace. We're going to see this peace deal through. This government will see the peace deal through because it's a matter of survival for the country. We just have to stay on it. Nebiya, last words before we wrap.
I just wish everyone to have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. And we love you. Have a good weekend.
Mwah, absolutely. Thank you, Nebiye. See you soon. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. If you haven't joined Patreon, get on it now. Here are the instructions. Thank you. Love you all. Thanks for your support. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your suggestions of guests and topics. And stay strong. Stay resilient. Stay positive. We've been through a lot together. And there's really nothing that we can accomplish when we stay united and educated and just keep doing what you're doing. I'm really proud of everybody. And I'm really proud of the community from all over the place. Ethiopians, Eritreans, our allies, all these friendships that are just so invaluable that have been gotten during this rough time. Hold on to those and keep going. Thank you so much. Good night. Here's how you become a member of my Patreon. Hi, everybody. This is Hermela Aragawi of EOAnews.com and on YouTube.com/HermelaTV. This video will walk you through how to become a patron of my Patreon account. It's a subscription model. NPR and other publicly funded news outlets use a model like this. It allows the company, the entity, to stay as independent as possible by being viewer funded. So I'll walk you through how to go to patreon.com/HermelaTV, sign up, and then become a monthly member. You'll first go to your browser on your phone or laptop and type in patreon.com/HermelaTV, patreon.com/HermelaTV. This is what the page will look like. You'll then click here where it says become a member. Then it will take you to a sign up page where you'll create a Patreon account that will require your name, your email address, and your new password for this account. So it will then either take you back to this page where you can click become a patron again, or it's possible it will take you to this landing page where on the left side you'll see the option for find creators. Click on that, and in the search box type Hermela TV. My account will show up, then it'll take you to this page. It will default to a monthly contribution of $5, but you can change that to whatever amount you would like. Here are two common issues that people run into. It may ask you for your state, country, and zip code. If it does that, just enter the information and continue on. You also have to go to the email of the email address you use for sign up and verify your account. So go to your email. You'll have gotten an email from Patreon. You have to click verify email address and then return to the browser where you are signing up. Then you will enter your credit card info and click on pay with card, and that's it. And please make sure you pass it around to your friends and family members that you know are interested in supporting independent journalism, particularly independent journalism that tells stories out of Africa from the perspective of the African people. I know a lot of us in Ethiopia, Eritrea, the Horn are celebrating the peace deal that was agreed to last week, but the disinformation in an effort to divide is not going to stop. In fact, we are seeing indications that it is ramping up. So we need to build these independent outlets. We need to scale up. Most of the production that you guys see on my YouTube channel is done by a production team of one, and we can't keep that going for much longer. So we need to hire some editors, some writers, and we need to hire good ones that are, if they don't already understand the general style of news out of Africa and what to look out for, they need to be trained, and we need to get at least part-time people in here, but also full-time to really be able to keep up with the daily news. And hope to see you on patreon.com/HermelaTV.
With all the fronts, recognizing the problem and the widespread situation and the genocide, and the next step would be to reorganize ourselves and totally dismantle the existing government, either by force or by negotiation, whatever they wish, and then settle transitional government as soon as possible. That's my name is Mahmoud Ugas. I'm from Somali States Force.
Mahmoud, M-A-H-M-O-U-D, and your last name, sir?
Ugas, U-G-A-S.
And sir, you said that you would need to, the aim is to totally...
All right. Please help me find Mohammed. You guys, U-G-A-S. We got to get him on the show and figure out what happened. I had to play that again, you guys. Thank you so much. Let's find them. Let's find these representatives and do an Oprah style. Where are they now? Maybe they've got a story to tell. You know, they shouldn't be hiding in the shadows. Let us know how that all happened. Where are they now, Ruth? Exactly. We want to do a Where Are They Now episode and really get, now that TPLF is kind of getting out of the picture, really get their story. They deserve a voice too, I think. So, and a real one, not some fake one like they had Eritrea. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for hanging with us, laughing a little bit. Also catching up on the Disinformation clown show that's been activated on social media and the different media channels. Thank you all for contributing. I got some new equipment today. Thanks for your contribution, and we're going to be using it next week. I've got a new laptop, some editing software. Love you too, Ruth. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tedros. Thank you, Eritrea. Thank you, all of you, for your comments. Appreciate your spending your time with us on this Friday. And please become a member of my Patreon or go to eoanews.com and contribute there. Love you all. Good night.